Thank you. With that, we reconvene to open session. Again, most folks are joining us virtually via the the URL that's listed on Board Docs. And with that, we will move to item 4.2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance before we report on closed session. And Member Zhang, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before I go ahead and report on closed session, for those of you who joined the special meeting earlier, we did run out of time in finishing the reading of some of the public comment. And in error, I adjourned the meeting instead of recessing. So, but just so you know, at the end of this regular meeting, we will complete the reading of the 4 outstanding comments. Okay, thank you.
Point of order, I just want to ask, do we still have the YouTube streaming problem?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so with regards to closed session actions, the board did take action. The board voted with 4 ayes, with member Rodriguez being absent, to move forward with reducing certificate management work year by 1 day beginning July 1st, 2020 for the 2021 school year. Each affected employee received their initial notice before March 15th. They will receive their final letter before June 30th. Okay, and with that, we move to item 6, student reports. Ms. Aquino?
So we have first our 2 students.
Brigitte and Sophia Rollins. Give us just a moment. They'll be joining us in just a moment.
Thank you, Ms. Aquino.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Prajeeth Jalila Moody, the current ASB president and NJHS. First of all, I would like to thank you for your continued support through these tough times. Even though the students of NJHS are distance learning, we still are learning and are pushing through. Since we began distance learning, many things have changed. One of those things is our schedule. On Monday, students have time to ask their teachers questions or help them increase their grade. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have math, our elective, and science. On Wednesdays and Fridays, we have social studies, ELA, and PE. Even though we aren't at school, our wonderful teachers have found ways to give a similar and great learning experience, even if it is with 100 students at a time. Teacher Appreciation Week was a couple of weeks ago, and many students showed their appreciation in different ways. I would also like to thank the teachers and staff of the school one more time for continuously supporting us, even with coronavirus being around. Next week, students will be returning to campus to drop off textbooks and pick up items they left at school. Students will come in groups of 15 for 15 minutes per group. The first 2 days are for 7th graders, and the second 2 are for 8th. Also, yearbooks are going to be passed out, which I honestly cannot wait for because I think they're going to be awesome. If you would like to get one, you can by buying them from Mr. Whitaker for $40 on campus. Thank you for your time, everyone, and have a nice night.
Thank you so much. Do we have another speaker from the junior high?
We are going to have from our McGregor campus, Miss Leslie Diaz.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sophia Rollins, the upcoming freshman class president for Newark Memorial. I'm going to start off by saying through these tough times, we aren't able to have on-site activities. So to uplift students' spirits, leadership came up with the idea of a virtual Spirit Week. We had Snack Tuesday, Wellness Wednesday, Pajama Thursday, and Cougar Pride Day. Also, during the distant learning, we had the upcoming 8th graders and freshman election. The turnout for this year was way more than last year, with a total of 21 students running for 8th grade office and 17 students running for freshman office. My slogan for the election was "A Voice for You," which means I want to make sure that students' voices will be heard. And through these past weeks, I've been listening to 8th graders and how this is affecting them. Most of us were looking forward to the end of the year activities, but we greatly appreciate the swag bags filled with amazing items. I think you should highly consider to have some type of event after this is all over for upcoming freshmen. Thank you for continuing to support all of us through this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophia. Now Ms. Leslie Diaz for McGregor campus.
Salinas, board members, and cabinet members. My name is Leslie Diaz, and I am a graduating senior at Bridgepoint High School. Before shelter in place, Bridgepoint was celebrating our PBIS successes with teacher-sponsored barbecues and our Bridgepoint hoodies. Bridgepoint also painted 2 murals with Presida Eyes artists. Crossroads staff visited Dakota Independent Study and DICE in San Lorenzo, but both Bridgepoint and Crossroads had early graduates this quarter. We are so grateful to Board Nguyen for our cap and gown photos and to Mr. Tamiani and his community production team for our documentary video. We miss our teachers and friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz. That was great. Thank you.
Thanks to be so sad.
Okay. Would you? Yeah.
And next will be our student board member, Mr. Cesar Castillo.
Thank you, Shar. President Martinez. So first off, I want to give the board an update on what's going on with graduation. So we do have a set in stone broadcast date. It'll be June 27th at 9 a.m. And I believe that'll be broadcast on YouTube as well as maybe on other channels, YouTube for sure. So, we're excited that we were able to come to a solution that was agreeable to everyone. It was a lot of work trying to find something that everyone was happy with. But in the end, like I've said before, we're happy that this is the right choice. So next week, students will be convening at Memorial in order of last name. So it'll start on Monday and end on Thursday, I believe. And students will be recorded as part of, or their scenes will be recorded for the graduation ceremony. So that'll be occurring next week. Today, lots of seniors were invited to the high school to receive their Stoles Cords and scholarship awards. So Miss Rengel, Coach K, and Ms. Strom were there, all handing out regalia, graduation regalia for seniors. Personally, I want to congratulate everyone that was there. I was fortunate enough to see some of my friends there, so I want to congratulate everyone on their achievements, and I know that we're going to be successful no matter what happens. Academically, students are finishing up AP testing tomorrow. It's been going on over the past 2 weeks. As you guys know, the College Board switched to a 45-minute exam with either 1 or 2 free response questions. Of note is the fact that a lot of students in Newark Memorial and across the world, as a matter of fact, had a lot of issues submitting their responses. And so, frankly, students aren't happy with how things were done, because it wasn't until the second week that the College Board started allowing people to submit their responses via email right after the exam was over if they experienced issues. So we would have hoped that College Board would have implemented equitable testing policy for everyone from day one, but nobody knows how to handle what's going on, and so their efforts were as good as they can get. And finally, checkup procedures for students are going to start next week as well. They're going to continue through June 5th, so freshmen first and then seniors. We want to give a huge shout out to all of the Newark Memorial support staff. So our office managers, Ms. Destuit, Ms. Wassertung, our librarian, for doing tremendous amounts of work to keep everything running. I know it isn't easy. I can't say I know, but it isn't easy to get through this. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And that is my report for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Student Member Castillo. And with that, we move to item 7, recognitions and celebrations. Superintendent Salinas?
Yes, thank you. So, well, first of all, weren't the students wonderful? That puts it all into perspective, and it reminds us why we're here, to do all of this work. But at the
Absolutely.
same time, it really makes it. I love hearing all the reports. So now some really good news. So I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Saavedra, who's going to speak a little bit about just what we do at this time during year. Yes, this is not normal, virtual, but what is normal and what needs to happen are these celebrations and recognitions of our staff. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Saavedra.
Thank you, Ms. Salinas. Ms. Aquino, are we going to be able to show that PowerPoint? Well, I wanted to share with you and with our community members that it is my great pride and honor tonight to bring forward the names of 2 extraordinary employees from the Newark family. Tonight we celebrate them as our CSEA Employee of the Year and our NTA Employee of the Years. I would like to share with you a few words about them so that you get to know them a little bit better. And I think we're waiting for. Thank you. And if we can go to the first slide. Wonderful. I wanted to introduce to you Ms. Paula Coffee. She is our CSA Employee of the Year. And here are some words for you to get to know her a little bit better. If McGregor campus could be described as a person, it would embody the mind, heart, and the soul of the school. And it could not survive without the knowledge, experience, skill, compassion, and work ethics of Paula. Paula brings forth on a daily basis. Her compassion and boundless, she's compassionate and boundless, which is exemplified by her patience and the way she listens and addresses students and families' needs with care, while always maintaining high expectations for respect and decorum in the office and throughout the school. Paula gladly offers her knowledge and expertise not only at our school, but other campuses and programs throughout the district. She is a wonderful person who possesses a growth mindset and humbleness that allows her to accept constructive feedback and grow as both professional and a human being. We thank Paula for her continued support and commitment to our students, families, and district. For our next person, I'd like to introduce to you Tara White, and she is our NTA or Teacher Employee of the Year. And here are a few words about Ms. White. Tara is a member of our school team and is highly respected by all staff members at our site. She goes out of her way to get to know and create relationships with all her students, not just those on the roster. The students at our site look forward to having her as a teacher, which is truly a credit to the positive impact she has on our students. Tara challenges her students academically and offers scaffold support so that all her students can be successful. When students come to her seeking help, she offers individualized attention and support. Not only does she teach academic content, but she spends time helping her students develop a character as strong as her own. She encourages students to be true to themselves and to do their best in and out of the classroom. Tara's commitment to music and Newark community is unparalleled. She has volunteered a number of hours to assist the PTA with many school events and gives her time freely to support students at various events on the weekends. She also volunteers her time after school to hold open door extra help hours. Students feel comfortable going to Tara for homework help and advice. Today, we recognize Tara for her outstanding service to our students, staff, and community, both inside and outside of the classroom. Thank you, Tara, for all you do and the commitment to our district. Congratulations to both of them again.
And President Martinez, I know both of these wonderful women are on the line. If you would indulge us, could we have them each say a few words? And we'll start with Ms. Coffee.
Absolutely. I was just wondering if they were going to be joining us. Thank you.
Paula, did you want to say anything? And we'll start with you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Ms. Salinas and cabinet and board members. I was really surprised. Very pleased for being recognized, and I want to thank you so much for the flowers. They are absolutely beautiful.
I'm so glad you received them. Yay.
I was really surprised, and I thank you very much. I love Newark. I've been with Newark for almost 21 years, and to me, it's like home. And I absolutely love my principal, and my teachers. And I know that this is different, but we all are learning. So I try to do the best I can in helping people, and I thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everything that you do. And I'll let, if other board members want to speak in a second, I jumped out first. But, you know, my experience, and I mean, all of us, I'm sure we all wish we could spend more time on our campuses, but, you know, my experience in just attending the graduation last year, I mean, you were front and center, and I know a lot of the, as Ms. Saavedra was reading the narrative on you, I mean, I think it really describes what you feel when you're on your campus, just how special that connection you all have. You know, it's a small team, but it's incredibly powerful, and just, it was really an emotional, you know, time, because you really feel that. So thank you for everything you do for taking care of our students and for helping in every which way you can. So thank you so much for your efforts.
Thank you.
If I can just jump in quickly, thank you and congratulations on this great and well-deserved accomplishment. But thank you again. Thank you for all that you do, all the work and everything that you do for our students. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Paula and Tara. I just want to say thank you to you both for doing tremendous work in the district and really taking care of all of the students and their families, and also extending that care to your colleagues. And it sure has stood out in the write-ups that was submitted, and so well deserved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'd like to say something to Paula. Our alternative school is like moving chairs, you know, constantly transitioning kids from Bridgepoint back to the high school. And, you know, for all these years, I remember Paula when she first came to us, and we've been so lucky to have her as you know, a steady person there at the alternative schools. And especially the graduations, she makes them more than just a graduation, it's an event. And really appreciate what she does with the staff and the principal and also the kids over at the alternative schools. Thank you, Paula.
Thank
I
you.
want to congratulate both honorees. Well-deserved recognition. Thank you for your hard work, your service to our district, and more importantly, your service to our students.
Thank you, Member Jean. Will Miss Tara join?
Yes, now we'll have Miss Tara White to share a little bit about music. And if you've ever been in her classroom, she makes you smile.
Perfect. Thank you.
I've been at music. I think this is my 6th year at music, and I started as actually a guest teacher for Catherine Waters, and then was brought back as a teacher for Catherine Waters, and then went under the leadership of Amanda Gallagher. Music is my home. It's my heart. And without those students and the support of my staff members, all the staff members, I wouldn't be who I am today. And it's absolutely all because of them. They are an incredible community and family to me, and they mean my world. So anything that I do, it's because of the people around me, who I have around me, and we all do it together.
Thank you so much for everything that you do for us and for our kids. It's wonderful to see just how your face lights up. So thank you so much for everything. Well deserved. Any other comments?
Yes, I separated my congratulations. So so just in order to be able to give my congratulations to you, Ms. White, again, thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for all your work in the classroom and everything you do for our students. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
I too would like to chime in. She is such a great teacher, and you could see it on her face that she loves kids, and these are tough times right now, and the young teachers that we have are showing us the way, and you're one of them, and I appreciate everything you do at music, and you're an example not only to music but to all our teachers on all the great things you do with our kids. Thank you. Congratulations on the award.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez.
So thank you, President Martinez, and also of special note, as you know, the Alameda County Office of Education, they're planning their virtual celebration, and so we will be, Ms. Saavedra will be submitting Ms. White's name and information, so she will be our representative for the Alameda County, so we're very proud.
Thank you, Ms. Salinas. Thank you for that.
Congratulations again, ladies.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So now, Ms. Saavedra, will go to our next item, which is 7.2, Retirement and Longevity Honorees.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Salinas. And continuing with the celebration and recognition of valuable employees, I would like to present the following employees and congratulate them on their 25+ years of service for the Newark Unified School District. And usually when we were back at the sites, we had made the recognition and we had a little celebration in person, but considering the new reality, we did not want to skip this and recognize their names of the people. So I want to start with our retirees. This year we have Maria Gallardo, who is retiring after 30 years of service to the district. Antonio Jimenez, 15 years. Doreen Kotake, 17 years. Miriam Lopez, 22 years. Juan Moreno, 19 years. Margarita Moreno, 23 years. And finally, but not least, Ricardo Ruiz, 15 years. We are so proud to have you as part of our family. For those that are continuing your journey with us, we hope that you keep up the good work and for many more years to come. Can I see the list of certificated people retiring? Again, we want to start with Mr. Brian Blattell, 30 years. Nancy Estrada, 33 years with the district. Timothy Hess, 31 years with the district. Deborah K. Nolan, 33 years with the district. Joel Mann, 7 years. Deborah Rowe, 18 years. Oh, I forgot the space. James Seckler, 25 years. And Linda Vieira, 35 years of service. Again, we would like to congratulate them and honor them tonight by reading their names. Thank you so much for all the work and dedication to our district, to our families, to our students. We will definitely miss you and appreciate everything that you've done for our district. And for those that are staying again, we look forward to continue working with you and appreciate all the years of services that you've provided for our families. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Saavedra, for bringing these folks' names forward. It's just amazing. just the dedication and the number of years, really, collectively that we have amongst those folks. So thank you to every single one of you on that list for everything that you've done. We wish you well. For those of you who are retiring, we wish you to enjoy your time, get some rest, and to your point, Ms. Saavedra, for those of you that continue the path with us, thank you so much for everything we do, and we hope to continue to, all of us, to deliver the best for our kids. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Martinez, if I can say a few words.
Sure.
Congratulations on the retirement to all these people you just named, and I just want to say it's a little bit bittersweet recognizing some of those names, and bittersweet because it's sad to see you guys go, but I'm glad you guys can finally enjoy your retirement. I know it's not on the screen, but just the names that stood out: Coach Hess, Nolan. There was a couple other teachers that they stick with you. So thank you for all the work, and everybody else that's retiring. Thank you for all the hard work you did for our district and for our students for so many years. Thank you.
I'd like to echo the same sentiments as Member Gutierrez. Seeing some of those names really literally giving me chills, and so happy for them to be entering into retirement and enjoying their new adventures as they head off to celebrate their hard work. Yes, a lot of those teachers and also a lot of the the classified staff, they have been with us for a long time, and that shows their dedication and love for this community. And I just wanted to say congratulations on all your tremendous work in the district, and have a great time in retirement. We will miss you.
I too was looking at the different names, and whether it's Doreen Kotaki over at Bunker, or Miriam over at Graham, and all the others on the list. All of them, and the naturally our teachers. These are the ones that have taught my kids and my grandkids, and I just feel so fortunate to have people that really love kids and love making a difference in the lives of our children, and I'm hoping that we can convince at least half of them to not retire and come back. So that's going to be our goal, to convince them to not retire. Congratulations.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Any other comments?
I want to be quick. Thank you for your services, and enjoy your retirement.
I also want to congratulate everybody retiring, especially the certificated employees, Coach Strada, Coach Nolan, Coach Hess, Coach Seckler, and Miss Vieira. Your impact on the high school won't be forgotten. I thank you guys I thank everyone in their presentation for your service to the district, and I wish you well.
And President Martinez, just for our last, as we close this part of the presentation, I do want to advise our retirees that there's one more surprise that we have for them. I won't say what it is, but I do want them to be in the Outlook, because they will be delivered to their homes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Saavedra. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. If no other comments, we will move on to item 8, which is public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Aquino, do we have comments that were submitted?
Yes, we have one comment.
Okay. Can you please read that into the record?
Absolutely. My name is Anna Catabaugh. I am the music teacher at Newark Memorial High School. My goal for this public comment is to advocate for my students based on a letter I submitted dated January 12th. Out of respect for my esteemed colleagues, all names have been removed. Thank you for the variety of ways you've been able to support the music program during the first semester. I am reaching out to you because I know there are resources my students
need access to that will continue to help further our growth as a program. I have listed them below. In addition, I have been integrating as much as I can into my classroom practices, but my students need more than I can provide during class time in order to still meet the state and national music standards. Thank you for providing 3 teachers to support us. This helped all of us tremendously. Resources needed: assistance developing a plan, continuing to develop a positive climate, student workshop or review on bullying and associated consequences, conflict resolution skills, social skills, character values, education, respect for cultural and individual differences, self-esteem development, assertiveness skills, and appropriate online behavior workshops. Review of school district computer use policy, review of school district Wi-Fi policy or development of appropriate Wi-Fi use policies for students, parent workshop on how to teach kids appropriate online behavior at home, appropriate Wi-Fi use, regular access to structured participation in a restorative justice program and structured plan. We cannot wait until next school year to receive these supports. It has been very clear to me that students need these now. The music program has use of 2 full-size classrooms and smart boards on a daily basis and can support hosting events at any time, including after school or on weekends, to support the resource requested above for the students. As facilitators of high school education, we owe it to our music students to teach them skills they will use the rest of their lives. If we do not capitalize on using this opportunity to develop their skill set so they are prepared for their time outside of high school, we are holding our students back from what they need and deserve as young adults to be successful. I received a response on March 4th after I waited for just under 2 months. My students were unable to benefit from the resources asked for in this letter. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Aquino. And with that, we move to item 9, the superintendent report. Ms. Salinas?
Yes, thank you, President Martinez, members of the board, and members of the community.
Oh,
there we go. Okay, members of the community, as Ms. Aquino puts up my slide deck, I do want to note, if you weren't watching the board meeting at the beginning, we did move an agenda item, and we're tabling the 12.3, the junior high science pilot, to November, excuse me, to January, to June. Am I being? To our next June meeting, my apologies. And because when we looked at it, and I want to thank our science department, the junior high, and Ms. Leonor Rabasura, we only had about 20 parents that did the survey. So we wanted to be able to send the survey out again. So junior high families, be on the lookout for a survey coming out next week. And then we hope to bring that item back to their first June meeting. So thank you for that. So I wanted to share with you with the superintendent's report just some of the work that we've been doing now as we're working through COVID-19 and the planning. Next slide, please, Ms. Aquino. So thank you to our graduation 2020 committee. As we heard from student board member Castillo and from our students, you know, we have a team of folks, our board members, our students, our principals, and the families who have been working diligently to have something special for our students. And so as Member Castillo shared, June 27, 9 a.m. will be the virtual premiere of a documentary for Newark Memorial High School's graduating class. Also of note, there will be a senior awards on June 5th. And then also for our Bridgepoint Crossroads graduates, another documentary premiere that will take place on June 20th. So a shout out to our community mentor, Mr. Taimani, and his team, who is working diligently with our students, with our staff, to celebrate the class of 2020. So I think what I heard from the principals, from our board, and from our students, most importantly, was that they wanted these films to really be Newark. And what better way to do it than with someone like Mr. Taimani and his team. So thank you all for your work on this, and we look forward to the premieres. Next slide, please. Also, as you know, it's not just graduation time, it's promotion time. So our elementary schools, families are going to be receiving information from each school principal, or in some cases directly from their 6th grade or kindergarten teachers, about details about each special event. And so please be on the lookout for that. In terms of the Newark Adult School, they will be doing a drive-through recognition on June 17th. And I want to note that this is due to the number of graduates. What I want to share is that as we start to work through this shelter in place and the new restrictions that continue to come out because we want to be safe and keep our students safe, we noted that in some cases, when a class is small enough, there is the possibility of doing a drive-through, like we did with the caps and gowns with the high school students, staggering it over time. We're able to do that with some of our smaller promotion ceremonies. So again, note and wait for some information from your school principal or from your teachers as to what that looks like. In terms of Newark Junior High School, they will be doing a virtual event that will premiere on June 3rd. Again, because of the size and as we're working with what the Alameda County Health Department has put out, these are the rules that we have to be following. So we can't do this alone as a school district. I just want to do a special thank you to the Newark Police Department for their support, in particular Lieutenant Macias and Sergeant Sandoval. They have been working diligently, working directly with our school principals to ensure that it's safe, that it is not a mass gathering, and that our families are safe as we celebrate. So thank you to the Newark Police Department. Next slide, please. Child nutrition update. So since March 17th, we have now served approximately 34,000 meals to students. And since May 7th, we are now averaging 42 meals a week. As you remember, we added a third site at Schillen Elementary School, but we also noticed that there is more of a need as we're starting to really roll deeper into this stay-at-home order. So as a reminder, we provide 5 days worth of meals to families, 2 on Monday and 3 on Wednesday. The locations are still the same: Schilling Elementary, Newark Junior High School, and the Central Kitchen near Birch Grove Intermediate. As a thank you to Ms. Sayers and her team and to all of our administrators, we're going to continue to serve students until Monday, August 10th, when we then will revert to the transition to the new school year. In the summer, we will have some of our classified employees that are returning to support with this work through the summer, as we do with our regular summer seamless program. Ms. Sayers and her team is working closely with the California Department of Education, and she was joking with me today through text that she thinks it's all the avocados and the asparagus that we're now adding to these bags. So, you know, what we want to do is take this opportunity to include more fresh fruits and vegetables, and so that is part of the meals that are coming out to each student. Next slide, please. Attendance. As we draw to the end of the school year, we do want to note that we still continue having a 95% participation rate in distance learning, but it's still not enough. What we have noticed is that we have really just had a very difficult time with our secondary students. So over the last 2 weeks, we've prioritized outreach, calls, letters to ensure that we have updated phone numbers and parent emails. That's going to be a push out of our student services office, because what we're noticing is that as we're trying to reach families, in some cases, families are still relying on their students' email address, and we really need our parents to have their own individual email address so that we can be in direct contact with the adults in the household. We use a program for the last few years called A2A, Attention to Attendance. And what we're doing now is we're going to formalize letters that will be sent home so that we can continue this personal outreach as we prepare for the fall. Next slide, please. Registration 2021 school year is open now, and I believe it's up. We had Ms. Leon has worked through having some virtual workshops, but now she has added some more step-by-step instructions as to how to register a student online. So please visit our website for more information. You can also reach your school office manager, or you can email Ms. Leon directly, and here is her email address. Next slide, please. In terms of communication, we are still using our district website as the main point of communication communication. And from there, you can also link to individual school sites, websites, but know that that's where we house all of the up-to-date information. I'm continuing with weekly emails to the community and also educational services. Mr. Dolovich sends out a newsletter every Friday to staff, just having some connections in there, sharing some resources and professional development opportunities. And in some cases, it's just to stay connected and to say hello and to put a smile on folks' faces. So Mr. Dolovich has been doing a great job. And I'm going to wish him a happy birthday because I know he's celebrating with his wife and children at home tonight. So a happy birthday to Mr. Dolovich. And finally, know that you can also email the district directly at info@newarkunified.org. We can refer your question or comment to the appropriate person and really try to help to troubleshoot any concerns or questions you may have. Next slide, please. So what we're doing now is planning for the 2021 school year. As you all know, in March, Newark Unified School District, we closed our schools, and this was all in response to COVID-19. Distance learning became the norm for schools all across the United States, really global. This is really truly a global pandemic. And we see that we now need to start to continue and really ramp up our preparations for the 2021 school year as we safely start to close out the 1920 school year. Next slide, please. So I want to share a little bit more about these work groups. So as you remember, I shared with you, we have developed 4 work groups, and they're composed of administrators, our classified employees, and also our teachers. And so these groups are really focusing in these 4 areas: facilities, how do we ensure we have safe places at school and in our offices for our students and for our staff as we hope to return. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the fall. Curriculum and instruction, Mr. Dolovich is working with a team of teachers. He told me, I think he's got about 25 folks on this committee, which candidly you have to do because we're not just a one-size-fits-all. We anticipate that what will work for elementary may not work for secondary. What may work in terms of instruction about a hybrid model where it's a combination of distance learning and in school perhaps. All of those decisions are being worked out and they are going through the process through this committee. In terms of policies, I'm working with Ms. Aquino, and we're building our committee to look at what policies we will bring forward to the board to direct us in terms of what changes do we have to put in place so that we really start to get ready for this, unfortunately, for this new normal for the fall. And then finally, staffing. We have to make sure that we are honoring our work with our labor partners and that we have a safe place to work. Next slide, please. In continuing with this, we are making decisions to make sure that we incorporate input from a variety of stakeholders. That's the Board of Education, staff, our labor leaders, and our parents. So as we're doing this, our work groups are coming together to address this. So for example, I will give you kind of one tangible example out of these. In terms of school and classroom configurations, we have to look at how do you socially, physically distance in a classroom that has to have a bunch of chairs and tables in there in addition to the students and the adult that has to be in there. Well, that means that our classrooms have to be configured differently. I want to give a shout out to Ms. Condon and to our classified staff that has already worked to equip plexiglass and barriers at our libraries and some of our offices, because as we start to get ready to have a safe closeout of the school year, they needed to make sure that these barriers were in place to ensure that our staff could close out the school year and get books turned back in or textbooks and certainly close out. Safety for students and staff, again, ensuring that we are doing work based on facts and continuing to have direction from Dr. Erica Pan, who is the Alameda County Health Officer. Board policies, adjustments again that need to take place. And then finally, meals for our students. As I said, we are not seeing a downturn in the number of students who are coming and families coming to pick up meals. We're actually increasing. And what that signals to us is that we have families that are in need, and we also need to step up to that. So we will continue to do planning for that for the 2021 school year. Next slide, please. We have to have assumptions as we start to prepare for 2021. We have to come to the realization, and I know many of us have, is that the threat of COVID-19 is going to remain until a vaccine is widely available. It's not just so much having the vaccine, is there enough vaccinations and vaccines that are widely available for all of us? So we are hearing that there's likely an 18 months from now window. Per the health department, we are also hearing that there is the possibility of second wave of infections that are expected in October and November, when usually there is also a flu season. So we know that we have to prepare for the possibility of site, district, and county-wide closures, that if students are to come back, we have to be ready to respond to this if, in fact, per the health department, a second wave of infections comes through. And finally, we also need to recognize that students and staff, we have some that have significant health conditions that they are especially vulnerable. And so then how do we have to adjust and make sure that we keep our staff and our students safe during the 2021 school year? Next slide. So once our government requirements are met, we are starting to look and plan what are the possibilities for returning to some in-person learning with appropriate notifications. Now know that at this point, no decision has been made around this. This is why we have the work groups. This is why I am meeting on a weekly basis with Superintendent Karen Monroe and with Dr. Erica Pan to hear from the health department as to what is the latest. And we certainly are looking to our governor to give us some support in this. So if we were to do some kind of semblance of a return to in-place learning, some of the modifications would have to be that we would have to ensure that we have a California stay-in-place order that has been lifted. We'd have to look to what is their direct, specific guidelines around the number of individuals that can be in an enclosed space. We would have to look at the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases that are declining or if they're remaining constant, again, determined by the Alameda County Public Health Department. And then once we have a directive with, again, specific guidelines for group gatherings, we know that then we can start to safely think about what that can look like for us as a school district. And we also have to just kind of come to the realization that school next year is going to be different for all Alameda County school districts. And so how do we do that? We start to plan for it. Next slide, please. So as a school district, we're starting to look at different scenarios for the incoming year. But we also know is that we have to be quick to make changes, because as what's been happening is that changes are happening again on a week-by-week basis. So some of the modifications that we are thinking about through our different groups is the possibility of perhaps continuing with distance learning 100%, or looking at a blended learning model, a combination of in-class and some distance remote learning. We have to look at the possibilities of how we will screen staff and students with the guidance of when they are to stay home or when they are to come onto campus. We will have to look at physical distancing in all settings, not just the classroom, the drop-off, the parking lot, other places where as a regular school year we would congregate, that has to look different. Some of the guidance that we're starting to get from the health department is to start to look at student groupings and the idea of cohorts. So looking at cohort of students that would really be, so for example, if there is a class of 30 students, we would have to divide that into 2 different cohorts of students who would then be together, not just in distance, not just in a classroom, but then would only work with one teacher. And we're trying to figure out what that could possibly look like. Again, the idea of assemblies or performances and sports is still out there. So tomorrow, I know that there is a convening of all of the athletic directors, and also we have a superintendent who sits on that group. We'll talk with NCS to talk about what does fall sports look like. is there a possibility of us able to do some fall sports that are outside but with no spectators? Or are they going to give us guidelines around extending the window for some sports? So no word yet on that. And I will definitely be in contact with Coach K, who is really our liaison, to hear more about what she's hearing as well. And then finally, our staff has to prepare for the learning gaps that may have occurred since we last left in school teaching. Next slide, please. So next steps for us, we're going to continue to gather input so that we make informed, fact-based decisions. We have to be based in facts, in science, for the incoming school year. After Memorial Day, we will be sending out a community survey. We want to hear from families and staff as to what are their thoughts around what their ideas are about the opening of the 2021 school year. So a survey will be going out to all families in Newark Unified. And again, we're going to continue with our regular updates and communication. Even though we're closing out the school year, please expect regular communication that will continue to all families. I will certainly work with the transition with the new superintendent, but know that we are expecting to continue to send out our regular Monday emails to all families so that we continue in communication with all of you. Next slide, please. So I want to thank the Newark community. More to come, but it's important for us to continue to update you all, and please be on the lookout for the survey. So that concludes my presentation for this evening, President Martinez. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Salinas. Thank you very much. Any comments? Okay.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I do, Ms. Salinas. First, happy birthday, Mr. Dalvich. Please enjoy your day. And then, Ms. Salinas, I don't know if this is something that you have on the calendar yet, but I know that a lot of parents are concerned in regards to getting information for the next school year. Do you have any timeline or dates as to when information will be distributed to them?
So at this point, we're going to continue with our weekly Monday updates. And so that will be the most real time we have. I want to give some time to these work groups, working with our labor partners and with administrators to really start to put together more tangible plans. The other piece is that we're still waiting to hear from the health department. Today, I was part of a meeting with 100 principals and superintendents. And so Karen Monroe is convening the Oakland Diocese, charter schools, all of us. And certainly what we heard today was that Dr. Erica Pan is going to look at our suggestions. She actually met with the superintendent from Castro Valley and the superintendent from Piedmont. And we gave all of the information to them. They were our spokespeople. And then we're hoping to get something in the next week and a half from the health department. Things as simple as how many people in a room? Like, what are the possibilities of that? I can share that some of the news that was starting to come out right now was in terms of face masks. And so the question was, at all times, or what do we do? And so at this point, they are recommending that if we were to return to some semblance of a blended or a hybrid model, face masks at all times. And then we said, well, that's really hard for a 5-year-old. And how do you do that? And how do you support a 5-year-old who's first time in kindergarten? And then you have to put a face mask on. And so those are the things that we're wrestling with. And so we do want to hear from the public. So we'll send that survey out, but continuing with the Monday emails for now.
Okay, and so the Monday, that's what I wanted to confirm. Monday updates as of now is all through email.
Yes.
Okay. And then with that in mind, also just wanted to just kind of put a scenario out there, because I know that you said you're trying to get all the parents to get an email because you can't communicate with the students. And I'm just going to put my experience out there. And with the lack of my parents' English, I'm thinking back to my childhood, and I probably created an email account for them. However, I was the one managing it. So for some students, that might be the reality. For others, it could be that it's just easier for them to manage one account and relay the information. So again, just putting that out there, because I know that is the reality for some of our students, especially our Spanish-speaking community, who the go-to person is the child.
Yes, so I think that it was a ask of Superintendent Salinas, I suppose. Is that, or just a comment, Member Gutierrez?
No, Superintendent Salinas was saying that they're trying to get all the parents to get emails. So I was just saying, I mean, consider it. You know.
Thank you.
I wanted to chime in if you don't mind. I just want to express my appreciation to Superintendent Salinas and the staff. It's been a very, very difficult last few months, and the way everybody's handled it, there's still going to be changes to come, whether it's hiring a new administrator or how do we make sure that our kids, when we do come back into the classroom, where there's going to be the assessment to make sure that the kids that did fall behind have a way to catch up. And then my heart really goes out when Superintendent Salinas talked about the 95% that we're able to reach, but we're not giving up on the 5%, because a lot of times we do, or some districts do, and those kids are important too. We for whatever reason, we haven't been able to reach them, and we're not giving up on that. And then the last thing is to transition. Hopefully before too long, we'll be able to announce our new superintendent, and the fact that Superintendent Salinas is willing to work on the transition and get the superintendent as involved as possible with the things that are going on to make sure that the new superintendent is up to date. I commend that, because it's so important to be able to have a transition from one administration to the other. So thank you, and it's really appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Yes, Superintendent Salinas, thank you so much for your thorough report. So it sounds like right now, about a week and a half out, I really like the idea of the survey that you are going to send out, because I think there's all the, we'll call the top-down information coming to us from which is at the end of the day where we get our guidance. It's great to hear from all, those of us who are parents, what keeps us up at night with regards to, what this looks like. So it looks like a week and a half from now, you might have some more updates, which kind of falls in line with our next board meeting. So we look forward to your updated report. There we go. Thank you so much. Okay, and with that, we'll move on to item 10, staff report. And will that be you introducing the subject?
Yes, yes. So as you know, our board had made a conscious decision to really do some thoughtful thinking about the possibility of a bond or a parcel tax. And at that point, the Board of Education gave guidance and direction to actually engage with a surveyor. And so Mr. Brian Godby is here today. I'll let Ms. Dela Cruz introduce him, and then we're going to hear more about this.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, good evening. We're pleased to have Mr. Brian Godby here with us tonight to go over the results of the survey. As you know, the survey was conducted in April, from April 13th to April 21st. And it was a survey that included the feasibility of either a parcel tax and or bond. So I'm going to go ahead and have Mr. Godby present the results.
Thank you, Marie. I appreciate that. And thank you, President Martinez and members of the board. I'm pleased to be here this evening. Can everybody see the presentation or yet? I don't see it on my end. There we go. All right, great. Thank you. If we go to the next slide, that would be wonderful. So the methodology for the survey was pretty straightforward, at least for us. It's become a phone survey and an online survey. And what that means is that we make online calls. In this case, we did 55, cell phone calls, 104. But there were also the online invitations, and we sent had 100 or 228 surveys completed online from a text invitation and 116 online surveys completed from an email invitation. The thing that does is it gives people the opportunity to participate however they would like. You can see that the online component has become a mainstay of our surveying. And what's interesting is when you look at the age group breakdowns, you see that all age groups are represented at just about the proportion we would expect, although seniors are just a little bit, 1 or 2% lower, and that's why we still do landline calls, because that's how we make up the difference for the seniors, so they're represented appropriately in the sample. The overall universe was likely November 2020 voters in the school district. We were in the field from the middle of April through the third week of April. The average phone survey was 24 minutes long. We don't know how long it takes people to do it online because they can start, go off and have dinner, watch TV show, and come back later. But what we do know is that they submit the final survey online 24 hours a day. And the other thing that we know is that during the crisis, our response rates have been increased across the board. So that's been encouraging and results in our sample size of 503 completed interviews, which gives us a margin of error plus or minus 4.3%. Next slide, please. And next one after that. Thank you. So there were a variety of questions, and we've got a summary of them today, but this one I think is particularly important given the superintendent's presentation. In this case, we asked people if they have a favorable or unfavorable view of the job state and local governments are doing to address the coronavirus crisis. And we called out specifically Alameda County and the city and the school district by name, so people know exactly what we're talking about. And for analysis purposes, in the 15 or so surveys we've completed since the shelter in place went into effect, we've been adding this variance somewhat together, and you can see in the box in the lower left-hand corner that the total favorable is 79%. The total unfavorable in your district is only 8% in round numbers. And that's a ratio of favorable to unfavorable of 10.1 to 1. That's actually the highest rating that we've seen out of the surveys we've done since this. I did another presentation today where I said they were at 70, but the high was 79, and I was thinking about you. So people in your district, I mean, it's a burden, and you know, it's a crisis. There's no question about that. But they think that the state and local governments are doing really a great job to address it. Next slide, please. Switching gears a little bit into the ballot question that we asked. This is for a bond measure, and you can see the wording on the right-hand side of the slide in the box. It meets the state requirements. One, there's a 75-word limit. We're required to say the amount of the bonds that would be being authorized, how much they generate, or how much would be generated a year by the tax increase, and that's 6.3 million in this case. What the rate is, and here we're talking about a rate of 6 cents per 100 of assessed valuation. And then it has to have a term, and that for your bond counsel and most bond counsels is while bonds are outstanding. So the rest of it is things that we can use to talk about what we're going to do with the money, and that's where you see the bullets and those sorts of things, given those state requirements. They either read this themselves in the online version, or we read it to them on the phone versions, and then ask, would you vote definitely yes, probably no, or definitely no. For feasibility purposes, we aggregate the definitely and probably yes together, and you can see here we're at 71% in round numbers, which is a very strong place to be for a bond measure, which only requires 55% to be successful. Now, that doesn't mean that this should just be put on the ballot and there's nothing else to do, because we do have those probably yes voters who need to be, you know, assured and explained what this would do and make sure that they continue to support it. My rule of thumb always is if you were to put a measure on the ballot and do nothing, that you'd probably lose half of the probably yeses. So that's 19% in round numbers, and obviously 19% taken away from 70, and we're no longer at 55%, above the 55% threshold. So it's critical to understand that there is work that needs to be done. Next slide, please. Now, we asked a variety of questions, and this is an example of some of them about how we might spend the money from the bond measure. These are all asked in a random order, and we get answers from them: much more likely, somewhat less likely, and much less likely. Then after we're done with the data collection and we're doing the data processing, we go back and assign the numeric values you see across the bottom of the slide. A much more likely is a 2, a somewhat more likely is a 1, a somewhat less likely is a -1, and a much less likely is a -2. And we create this intensity scale that you see the numbers next to the red bars. And it's a better way to rank these items than just adding percentages together. Now, we obviously show the percentage range as well, and that's the blue arrow toward the middle of the slide. But the reason we do this is you could have something that was 40% much more likely and 20% somewhat more likely, that's 60 total, but you could have the opposite, 20% much more likely and 40% somewhat more likely, which is also 60% total. So, but those are two entirely different 60% in terms of the intensity of support. And so that's why we create this intensity score to rate them. But we still need to look at the percentages because that tells us where we are vis-a-vis the 55% threshold. And finally, from this methodology, we look at what we call tiers, and those are statistical groupings. And basically that means that they are technically tied from a statistical perspective, but numerically different. So they're ordered in terms of the numerical ordering, but technically they are all grouped together in each tier. So in tier 1, we have really important items: upgrade and add science, technology, engineering, math labs and classrooms. So sort of a STEM item that is very popular at 1.32, or about 87% at least somewhat more likely support the measure. So that's quite encouraging. The second one is bring all elementary, middle schools in the district up to the same standard at a similarly high level. Improve, upgrade, or replace outdated electrical, plumbing, heating, air conditioning systems, etc. And sorry, there's some ellipses in here to make things fit on the PowerPoint. That's also important, as are the next three in the top tier: upgrade schools for earthquake, fire safety, accessibility for students with disabilities, convert, update, and transition schools for 21st century learning, and update libraries at all schools are the top tier, and the items that are most important to the voters in your community. Now, the second tier is also important. Improve, add, repair, or replace aging restrooms, complete deferred maintenance of classrooms, libraries, and multi-purpose rooms. The caveat is, though, they're just not as important as those items at the top of the list. And during a campaign or when a measure's on the ballot, there's limited opportunity to communicate. So you really have to be spot on. And so that's why being at the top of this list rather than in tier 2 is important. Next slide, please. So the next slide shows the informational statements, and these are a combination of positives about the measure as well as some accountability kinds of things. And the methodology is largely the same, although the one note is that you see that the scale across the bottom is just 2, 1, or 0, so we don't have a negative sided equation. That just means that you can't compare a 1.4 on this set of questions with the rankings on the previous questions because it's a different scale. We can still do the same things in terms of ordering them and the same things in terms of grouping them in tiers, but they just can't be compared apples to apples with previous. So lots of things here, and again, there are some ellipses, so I'll read them, the full wording. The top one is this: the new schools will have modern technology and science equipment to better prepare students for further education or the workforce. At 1.4, that's 82%, at least somewhat more likely to support the measure, and that's obviously a really strong item. The second item is an accountability kind of provision. The money raised by this measure will be controlled locally and will go to our local schools and cannot be taken away by the state. And that cannot be taken by the state is really the key here. And this item ranks in the top 3 in virtually every district because people want to make sure that the money is going to stay local. None of the money raised by the measure will be used for administrator salaries. That's another accountability provision that's almost always important as well, and it is in your district. Fourth, the measure requires independent citizens oversight and audits to ensure the money is spent as promised, another accountability component. And fifth, the measure is critical to convert our schools so they can provide 21st century learning in science, technology, engineering, and math. So you're seeing a theme that STEM kinds of projects or STEM related projects and 21st century learning, so looking forward, are things that people want to hear about. Now, the trick here is to convert the facilities into the output because it's not so much always the facility itself that people are concerned about. It's really the, what does this do to improve student learning? And that's the theme that we're seeing. In deference to your time, I won't go down and read the rest of them, but you can see there's a variety of items in Tier 1 on this slide that are very important. Next slide, please. So after then introducing the idea of some of the opposition arguments that we might hear, we came back to our ballot question a final time, and it's the same wording from before. The initial test we were at 70.9, and this final test we're at 68.6, which is a little bit lower. Statistically, it's not significant, but obviously we've talked in more detail, and so we've lost a little bit of support. But the definitely yes is basically the same, and given the fact that a Prop 39 bond measure only requires 55% to be successful, if we take away the margin of error of 5%, this could be as low as 63.5, maybe 64 with rounding, which is still a substantial cushion over the 55%. So it suggests to me that it is feasible and that the board can certainly consider moving this forward. The one catch is, again, there's still some people that are probably yes, and that's fairly typical. So there does need to be an information effort. There does need to be an independent campaign. Obviously, the school district staff can't organize that. That has to be a community effort that comes together to support the measure. But both of those things, the public information that is allowed and that independent campaign are critical to make sure we keep those 36% on board, and so we cover the 55% on election day. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of what we've talked about here. If we talked about the support for the measure on the first test at 70.9. We didn't go into the middle test, but it was 75. And then the last test at 69. Again, as I noted, this suggests that the bond measure is certainly feasible. If this were a 2/3 threshold, it'd be a different story because with the error rate, we'd be below the 2/3. But thankfully, bonds in California are now 55% for school districts. So that's the good news. And this is feasible at that level. The top tier items, as we talked about before, upgrade and add science, technology, engineering, and math labs in classrooms. You'll notice I always use the words. I don't use the acronym STEM. And while educators and parents are very familiar with the idea of STEM and also STEAM, the voter population is made up of a substantial number of people that are 55 plus, and they don't necessarily know what STEAM or STEM means. So it's important to sort of, if this goes on the ballot, to purge the acronyms from your vocabulary. And
Brian?
Yes, Marie.
Brian, can we open it up for questions? And
Yeah, that's essentially it.
Okay, summarize it.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you very much for the review. Board members, are there any questions?
Just real quick, was that the end, or is this an intermediate for questions?
No, there are no more slides. That's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're fine.
Right. And many of us, Mr. Godby, we had the opportunity to review some of this and have a chance to ask you, just some clarification questions, but you did a great job at just walking everyone, all of us again through the methodology. So that was very helpful. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I have two questions actually.
Sure.
So, hey, Brian, this is Member John. I think maybe I asked you this question during our private meeting. I think the first one I still want to confirm is that November 2020 likely voter universe, is that derived from the November 2016 election, or it was using the 3 out of the 5 election that you voted on?
Well, we don't use the 3 out of 5 in this scenario. If it was a smaller turnout, or if we expected it to be a smaller turnout, we would do something more like that. In this case, we want to try to get it as large as possible because this will be at least equal to previous presidential turnouts like the 2008, which was a record high. At least in California, we think it's going to be. So our algorithm was to include people who voted in the November 18, because that brings a recency component into it. Mm-hmm. Or the November 16 or the new November 12. So we've got 2 presidentials and the gubernatorial, which was a reasonably high turnout for gubernatorial, but more recent. So anybody who may not have been living in Newark at the time wouldn't have been in that unless we added the November 18. So it's one of those 3.
So it's any one of the 3. If you voted, you're on the likely voter universe. Okay.
That's right, yeah. And we also look at the percentage that yields and then compare it to what we think or what we've seen in Alameda County in the past. It's a little harder to determine what happens in an individual city because the voter data isn't aggregated that way. But this matches the model that we use across the state.
Yeah, I think the next question, I think I sort of asked you, but I didn't quite understand your methodology. Was that sampling reweighting? Because you're calling all the likely voter universe, and then ended up 500 of them actually answered your call. So how do you do that sample reweighting? Because that sample does not, like if you break down by ethnicity or break down by age, probably doesn't really represent the general electorate in the November, or there are some off on the weighting on the ethnicity. How did you do any? Did you do any reweighting based on 4 years ago or 2 years ago's percentage among that?
Yeah, we do. Because we have a variety of demographics available to us on the voter file and that we match to the voter file, everything from age, gender, partisanship, ethnic surname, household income, home value, etc. And we look at all of those variables after we're done with the survey to make sure that it is representative of the population that we're looking at. In this case, it is the likely November 2020 voters. It's not all voters and it's not all residents. It is very specifically that November 2020. And so the data is weighted to that. What's interesting, I mean, the sampling strategy is designed so it is in fact a random sample without even the weighting and reflective of the universe, but we always weight it just around the edges to make sure we're right on. And in fact, this is.
Yeah, I think in Newark particularly, last one, do you think that we might, do you think because of the last name, do you think it's possible that we oversample the Latino voter but undersample the Asian Filipino voters?
Let me look at the demographics. So the East and the categories that come to us from our data company are East and South Asian was 20%, European. Now this is by surname, not by ethnicity, because the voter file doesn't have ethnicity on it. There's no ethnic question asked. So we're identifying these as best we can by surname, and there's an inherent problem in that, and that is a Smith can marry a Hernandez, or a Hernandez can marry a Smith, and names get changed, names get hyphenated, and so it becomes challenging to do just a surname match. But if you were thinking about targeting a list to East or South Asians, you wind up having to go to the same voter file, and so the targeting methodology is the same as our sampling methodology, given that there are those surname issues. So again, East and South Asian are 20%, European is 36%, Hispanic is 30%, likely African American, which is very difficult, and so it's very low, is 1.1 because their surnames are similar to European surnames, obviously. And then other is 6.3. And again, from our likely voter universe, that's what we saw the distribution as. So I don't think it's oversampling any one group. Now, there may be more Asians in the population than there are in the voter population. So if you think there's a dissonance there, that might be what it is.
Gotcha. Thank you. Any other questions from the rest of the board?
Yeah, just a clarification, Mr. Gabi, because I think it's more to stress the point, because you're saying the sample is representative of voters. So not necessarily,
exactly.
Yeah, likely voters, not necessarily, like you said, Newark's population,
right,
which would definitely vary from our voters in general anyway. In any
you probably have much higher Latino and Asian population than the likely voter population. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, who but most likely don't vote based on the information.
Yeah.
And
Thank
as
you,
a
for highlighting that, I think that is an important point. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. And as a reference for process in regards to the next steps, do you have any recommendations, or does it defer to our staff and board to see what the next steps we want to do?
Well, what usually happens at this point is the board will give the staff direction on whether you want to proceed. It's not a vote to proceed, it's just direction for them to work with bond counsel to get the legal documents in order to bring back to the board at a future board meeting for you to decide if you want to put a measure on the ballot. And so those are the steps that you need to go to. Now, there's a deadline, of course, and that's the first Friday in August. From a statutory perspective, you need to look at your board schedule, meeting schedule, so you can schedule the vote appropriately. And also, it's useful to check with the county registrar of voters to make sure that they don't have some other deadline in there. I have not heard that in Alameda County, but it's always important for staff to check that.
And if I recall, I think you gave us that warning due to the pandemic, that in case they change any of those dates, just for us to be aware. Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you.
I just have one question.
Sure.
Hi, Mr. Godby.
Hi.
So in terms of the data that was collected, I was wondering if it would be helpful for us to be able to review, and is there data that is collective enough so that we can use to see if we were to do the to campaign for the bond election to help target the voters that we need to get out there to vote on the bond?
So this is obviously a survey now that's presented to the board. It's a public document, so that is certainly available to members of the public. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I know this item was informational. When we spoke, Mr. Godby, obviously you've presented the results of the survey with a summary. Hey, things look positive here, but at the end of the day, we'll now have to give direction. I know that we had that question about the timing. Thank you for reiterating that Friday, the first Friday in August is the filing period. Of course, we'll have to work with staff to work backwards from that to make sure we arrive at a decision before then. Okay, Ms. De La Cruz, is there anything you'd like to add?
In terms of next steps, if we can't get any direction this evening, I mean, we could certainly add it to the next board agenda so we can have further discussion. and kind of think about the timelines and what we need to do next.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, you know, this is the first time some of us have had an opportunity to see some of the results. I think this is the first time that we are discussing it in a public forum. Personally, I'm not prepared to give direction today. I think to Member Fung's point in terms of, you know, having access to and getting a bit more information. My suggestion would be to bring it back. Unless other folks, members of the board, feel strongly that they're ready to give direction tonight.
Ms. Martinez, sorry, President Martinez, I would agree with you, but I would want to add the suggestion of maybe having a meeting with the subcommittee to kind of discuss the next steps before it gets agendized in the next meeting.
Ms. De La Cruz, can you please schedule that? I think that makes sense.
Yes, we'll schedule a subcommittee meeting and discuss what we'd like to do at the next board meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Godby.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we move to item 10.2, which is a review of the interview process for the high school principal. Ms. Salinas?
Yes, thank you. So Ms. Saavedra will give information, no decisions. This is really a discussion and informational item at staff report. Thank you, Ms. Saavedra.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Salinas. Thank you, President Martinez and members of the board. The purpose of this next few minutes is just to give you an update of the timelines of things that were discussed earlier tonight, but this is a little bit more, I guess, detailed information of the time. I want to start with a timeline of what we had to do for the principal interview. And then I want to go over some questions, clarifying questions or responses in regards to the process of how we're interviewing, and especially now that the times have changed and we have to do this remotely. So if I can just ask for the next slide. And I need to move my window here. So as you can see, the positions were posted once again, and this position and some of the comments of tonight were right. This position's been posted before. The last time that we posted the position was around April 14. And the position remained open until May 5th. And this is just to give us some time, a few weeks, so that we can advertise the position as much as possible. And then after the position got closed on May 5th, the following week, it takes usually, depending on the number of applications, the applications get screened. We look at credentials, we look at experience, and I tend to do this with other people from human resources in regards to checking for credentials, a little bit of background history, and also in collaboration with Ed Services, because ultimately this is a position that would be supervised by Ed Services. So this took place around the week of May 6th to the 8th. So it took us a couple of days to go through application screenings. And then the week of May 11th to the 15th, the interview panel was put together. In a few moments, you will get to see who actually is part of the interview panel. Unlike other years where we have our go-to people, we wanted to do things differently this time around, and invited brand new members to the panel. We attempted to, the majority of them have not been part of the interview panels for principals for the principal position, because we just feel like we needed some fresh perspective on what they're looking for. And obviously, I will be there to guide them and probe on questions. So the interview panel was reached and invited for the interview. And tomorrow, May 22nd, our first round will be conducted. I am pointing out again the protocol to be followed. We do have a protocol that's been shared with all administrators in hiring managers on steps that they need to take to ensure confidentiality, to ensure fairness, to ensure that we are conducting these interviews as clean and less complicated as possible. And honestly, to try to find the right fit for what we're looking for. So the protocol has been shared with everybody. And then we will be ready to conduct our first round of interviews tomorrow at 8:30. It's needless to say, I do start with talking to the panel, going over the steps, the responsibilities, the expectations for the day. And as you can see, it's a lengthy process before a recommendation from them is suggested to move forward to a second round of interviews, which will will be about the week of May 26 to 28. Again, the purpose or the panel's task is to make recommendations. So even them, they don't make the final hiring. I just want to remind the board that the final hiring is done by the board. When we bring a name to be recommended for the position, we make a suggestion, and so ultimately it gets accepted by the board. So again, our final round is scheduled again remotely with executive cabinet on the week of May 26 and 28 if we have any candidates that will be moved forward. And hopefully we'll have a recommendation to bring to you by June 4th. If I can just go to the next slide.
Yep. Thank you.
So again, a little bit of the process here, just in detail. The pre-screening of the applications are conducted by me in collaboration with Ed Services, or I should say the Human Resource Department in Educational Services. We will be using the remote interview protocols, following our remote interview protocols with HR. And then the composition of the hiring committee is as such. We selected 2 NTA representatives, 2 NUMA representatives, 2 CSEA representatives. All of these groups include the presidents of each individual group. In addition, we have invited 2 parents, and we put parent community members because some of these are guardians of people that are very invested in the community. And then 2 students representative as well. So we will have 2 students join us at tomorrow's interview. At the conclusion of the day, again, the panel will make a recommendation to the HR facilitator, which is me, and we will see if we move forward a name for the superintendent and cabinet to interview a second time. And this way we will see if we bring something, if we move forward with a recommendation for the June 4th board meeting. Any questions?
I do not have any, well, I just wanted to clarify, because I think you said that the committee will be will suggest names that would move to that to your final, right? So it could be more than one name. Gotcha. Okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
I did have a question or possible concern. Again, maybe just more on clarification, because we have, after endeavoring an interview process, we learned a lot from it, and that we received some great tips. So one of the benefits of the process that we followed was getting input from various staff groups, so all staff, I would say, and hearing what the staff needed, what the staff was looking for, what they would like to see in a new candidate. So that was a great a tool that we used. Second, in regard, we had a panel as well. However, they just provided strengths and weaknesses in order to evaluate the final candidates, which was again also a great tool for the final, in this case, board to select the finalists. So I thought it was a pretty good process that we used. Again, not suggesting anything, but just wanna put out there the process that we followed, because I thought it was a great process, and if anybody wanted to use it, by all means.
If I can clarify, one of the documents that the panel goes through, we do have, we call them the grid. It's a grid where people, one of the recommendations with the panel as we are interviewing candidates is to select their number one candidate or the number two candidates. And it's not until we are done meeting all the candidates that we are able to have a conversation based on how they rank their candidate. And at that time, we do have an opportunity to discuss strengths and weaknesses so that we make a better and more informed decision.
So who makes the final decision then?
The board. So we.
Sorry. Who makes the final decision to bring the finalists before it gets brought up to the board?
The final recommendation, I think, is, yeah.
Yes.
So again, the community or the panel makes the recommendation based on their observations, based on the answers that the candidates have provided, and that's actually the advice we give them to just stick with, to try to avoid other pitfalls, like the hair, the clothing. We stay away of all of that and personal opinions, and we base our recommendations on strength and weaknesses again.
So this panel, so this panel that you guys are composing, they'll bring over a recommendation to you guys. Then you, executive cabinet, brings a recommendation to the board based on the panel.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Oh, that's a good point of clarification, because I thought, and if you go to your previous page, it actually talks about you all will conduct a next round of interviews. And I think this is a really important distinction from a process perspective, because, just, speaking as a parent and where other principals in elementary, I think my experience was that we'll call it the advisory committee, and the subgroup. I think it's really clear to have that expectation. That's why one of the reasons we wanted to kind of review the process. We don't get to dictate it for you. We just wanted to understand it. But I think in the past, and I remember having this conversation with the previous superintendent, there were the folks on that subcommittee were upset that their first choice was not picked, right? As an example. Mm-hmm. So I think it is really important for this protocol or for this distinction, because it looks like there is a final round of interviews with executive cabinet. So just to be clear, are the ultimate decision makers the executive cabinet, or are you taking a direct recommendation from the subcommittee? I'll call them the
panel.
Sorry. Yeah, and again, as a reminder of the things, the checklist of things that we do prior to beginning or prior to meeting the first candidate in an interview panel, we go over the expectations, and I think I repeated multiple times throughout the conversation with them so that they understand that their role is not to select, their role is to recommend options for cabinet to consider for a second interview. And the second interview is very different than the first interview, because obviously there's more content in regards to knowledge of ed code, knowledge of managing school systems, knowledge of instructional and curriculum. So it goes much deeper into the type of questions that a panel, the first panel gets to ask. So
okay,
it's only
so Ms. Saavedra, kind of piggybacking on what President Martinez said, that was kind of where I was trying to get some clarification. So your panel will give you guys strength, will provide you, and in this case I'm looking at executive cabinet, will provide executive cabinet strengths and weaknesses, and with their selection of first candidate. Then you guys, then executive cabinet will then select another round of candidates to do another interview that will be then conducted by executive cabinet. Is that correct?
So let me make sure I clarify. So the purpose of the first round is to, for lack of a better word, disqualify the people or the candidates that are not meeting the standards or that the group is looking for. So in my experience, we tend to have 2 to 3 people that move on to the second round. It is during the second round with cabinet that cabinet either makes a selection, and if there's two strong candidates, we may ask the board, we will share with the board the strengths and the weaknesses in order to make an informed decision prior to you having to make it on the spot. We will share that information with you.
Okay, so, and then that's kind of where I was going at, and just to use your words for the sake of having fairness, and in this case, I will include the word an unbiased opinion. I'm going to be careful with how I say this, because again, I don't want to interfere in the work that you guys are doing, and I don't want to overstep, but I would like to throw out the suggestion, again, based on a process that we just endeavored and I thought was really good, is I would suggest and leave it for you guys to consider having your panel not give an opinion, not select a candidate, not give a first choice, because that could initially create the bias, and maybe just give you the strengths and give the executive cabinet the strengths and the weaknesses for each candidate. So then the executive cabinet would then choose who's going to go to the second round of interviews.
Let me pull back, because I think we are kind of treading on a fine line here. I think though, and I will only speak for myself, Member Gutierrez, but I think I know where you're going. Earlier meeting, we had a lot of public comment, and I think just making sure that that everybody knows that there is no preconceived outcome, right? And that there are really clear expectations. Really, at the end of the day, the decision makers are the executive cabinet. And for me, I think it's just really managing folks' expectations, because I've seen it firsthand where stakeholders, parents, staff are really disappointed when their first choice isn't chosen. Again, I think that's why really one of the things that, and I think you will hold me honest, Ms. Saavedra and Ms. Salinas, Superintendent Salinas, is that we've been asking for a real transparent view of the hiring process for such a critical hire, right? Because we wanted to make sure that that everybody knew how the decision is being made, and that it is really, as impartial, and at the end of the day, the clarity of who makes the decision, so that folks aren't upset. So I think we'll leave it at that, because that is not our role to play. But thank you for sharing the process.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have a quick question.
Oh, sorry, apologize. I didn't see you. Remember?
No, that's fine. If you can bring back the slide. Actually, it's okay. I can pull it up myself. So in terms of the composition and the panel, you said that you have a scoring matrix for the panel to be able to evaluate the candidates. So at the end of it, will they be totaling that matrix and then present you the final candidates for interviewing in the next round? And then also, second question is, currently, how many candidates are going to be interviewed?
Okay, we cannot share how many candidates are going to be interviewed, but she can definitely answer the other question.
Okay. Yes, and the simple answer is yes, Ms. Wen. Number one, the matrix is used to total the number one, number two, number three, number four choices that the group together may have. And what we do is we have to come up with a consensus of if someone is if the difference between candidate A and candidate D is really big, then obviously we have a conversation whether the panel is going to even invest any time discussing the person, or simply the panel needs to agree to disqualify. So every time that we bring to the conversation a candidate, we do have to move, we have to agree to move on. And even when we're talking about strengths and weaknesses, we we dedicate a lot of time to highlight those things that they really feel would be a good match for the position, and the negative, and sometimes even the negatives, can be a source of information when we're making these decisions. But ultimately, the matrix is used to add up the favorite to least candidate using numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Great.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we will move forward to, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we move to item 11, employee organizations. Ms. Aquino, do we have any? Yeah, yes.
We have one from Sue Eustace, President, CSCA, Chapter Newark, Chapter 208. As most of you know, it is Classified School Employees Week. I cannot begin to tell you how much of a difference you've made in the lives of our children here in Newark, because you do. Teachers are important, and so are you. Classified employees are not often told that enough, not recognized enough for a job well done, and certainly don't get paid enough. Despite all that, you stay and continue to work here in the Newark Unified School District. I am so proud of you and have been for 44 years. You are a class above the rest. I want to say thank you. Thank you for being you and doing the great job you all do. I am proud to represent you. This is a very difficult time. Many of you are anxious to get back to work because you love working with our children. Although you are home, this is still your week to shine. Every day you work makes a difference in the life of a child.
Thank you, Ms. Eustace. We absolutely agree with your comments. Thank you very much. With that, we move to item 12, new business, and that is the item 12.1, the third interim report. And there is a recommended action that that we approve for submission this third interim report. Superintendent Salinas?
Yes, thank you. As you know, we needed to submit a third interim based on our qualified status. Ms. Dela Cruz is going to give some more details and an overview for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Salinas, President Martinez, and members of the board. I do have a PowerPoint, and we will have Shar put that up in a second. So, as you know, we did file a qualified certification at our second interim report. So I'm pleased to share with you the third interim, which was required because of that qualified status. Normally, this report, if we had presented a positive report, we wouldn't be completing a third interim at this time. Next slide, please. So along with the report, Alameda County also required that we provided a list of specific reductions for 2021 and also an update on our school consolidation advisory committee. And I included that in the report, and I hope that you've all had a chance to go through the attachment that was provided as part of this agenda item. And basically, in terms of the school consolidation committee, we are planning to have our first meeting next Wednesday, the 27th. We did contract with a facilitator, and we've selected the committee members, and we are excited to have our first meeting next week. This report does cover the period of July 1st through April 30th. It is a snapshot of the budget with projected year totals as of April 30th, 2020. It reviews our revenues and our expenditures that are forecasted for this current year as it compares to our adopted budget and second interim, which was the last projected year totals that we provided to the board. And we also provide a multi-year projection for the next 2 years, 2021 and 21-22. In this third interim report, we do not have to provide any certification, whether it's positive, qualified, or negative. Although I do want to mention that because we did certify qualified not only at second interim, but we also qualified at first interim and also qualified the last year, the first and second interim. We have been notified by the Alameda County Office of Education. This was subsequent to our second interim review letter, that the Fiscal Crisis Management and Assistance Team, which is FCMAT, will be engaging with the district to do a study, which is what's formally known as a fiscal health risk analysis. And this all has to do with a 2018 bill that was passed. It's known as AB 1340. It provides an automatic engagement if districts fall into one of the 5 different categories. So, for example, if a district has a disapproved budget, if they're negative interim certification, if there's any lack of going concern, and if there's 3 consecutive qualified interim budget certifications. And in our case, we had 4 consecutive qualified certifications. So FCMAT is already in the process of going through this study. It's going to be about a 6 to 8 week study, which will include meetings with our staff and providing documents and working with them to guide us through this analysis. So this third interim has to be submitted to the board, to the County Office of Education, also to the CDE, California State Department of Education, and the State Controller by June 1st. Next slide, please. So some of the highlights and the changes in second interim, we increased our fund balance by $566,000. And reviewing our revenues and expenditures, we did have additional revenues, mostly from prior years federal Medi-Cal administrative activities reimbursements of $428,000. Back in 2012, there was an audit, and the Medi-Cal reimbursements were kind of held back, and we finally got our reimbursements from these prior years from that audit. This 428 is actually going to help offset our special ed contribution that's being made from our general fund. And in terms of the expenditures, we've had reductions in utilities and substitute costs, mostly due to our school closures. So as you can see here, the third interim, we have a deficit of $266,000 as compared to second interim when we had a deficit of $833,000, which is a change of $566,000 in our fund balance. So at second interim, you can see our ending fund balance was $3.6 million, and now our ending fund balance is projected to be at $4.2 million. Next slide. Some of the things that we need to think about and to consider is any potential savings that we may have in unspent dollars. We will need to backfill against next year's anticipated reduction. As many of us are already hearing, the state funding next year is significantly has been impacted by our pandemic. We've had additional costs due to the pandemic, including extra time compensation for essential work by our classified employees, having to clean and disinfect our schools needed additional hours. The virtual graduations, normally, we obviously we wouldn't have those, but they're additional costs for us now. and any food service costs, distance learning services, material supplies and resources, having to purchase personal protective equipment like masks and gloves, and having disinfectants and hand sanitizers. And moving forward, a lot of facilities, possibly modifications. So in our multi-year projection, we do have assumptions based on what we knew at the time that we were preparing the report. And the recommendation that we had in terms of the cost of living adjustment was that we should be projecting zero COLA in 2021 and 21-22. So that's what I've included in our multi-year projection. All the other assumptions pretty much stayed the same. However, since this report, the STRS and PERS rates, we will get some relief in the next couple of years. Those will go down about 2 percentage points, and it will be included and built into our adopted budget. And then our P2ADA is at 5,477. Because of the COVID-19, they did use February 29th as our cutoff date. And this is a slight improvement of about 9 ADA, but we'll take it. Next slide. And when you look at our multi-year projection with all of those assumptions incorporated into the next 2 subsequent years, you can see that our deficit is going to go from 266,000 this year to 1.1 million in 2021. And in 21-22, that will almost double to 2 million. So between this year and the next 2 subsequent years, the total change in our fund balance is going to be about 3.5 million, which is the total of all of our deficits for this year and the next 2 years. And you can see how that will impact our fund balance, starting with 4.4 million this year, and by the end of 21-22, if we don't make any changes or adjustments, we will be down to 965,000. And again, when we look at our reserves, this is only on the unrestricted side, because we can't use restricted fund balance as part of our reserves. We do have a set aside for our NTA agreement of 466,000 this year, and a reserve for economic uncertainty for the remainder of our fund balance, which is 3.7 million. And in Fund 17, we do have special reserves of 2.2 million. It is slightly higher because we did have some interest income. And our total reserves available is 6 million at the end of this year. But you can see that by the end of 21-22, if you reduce it by the deficit, we will only have 3.2 million by 21-22. But the good news is, I mean, if you look at our minimum required 3%, which is 3% of total expenditures on both sides, the unrestricted and restricted, in 19-20, that minimum is 2 million. And 2 million compared to 6 million, just that test, we would meet the minimum. And again, in 2021, the 3% minimum required is 1.9 million. Again, it's almost 2 million. And you compare that to total reserves available, which is 5 million, and we would again meet that minimum. And the same is true for 21-22. So just based on this multi-year projection, if we were to certify, we could possibly certify positive. Next slide. And since we do have a little bit of information on the May revise at this time, the governor announced his May revise on May 14th, and I attended a workshop with school services a couple of days ago, and also the one with Capital Advisors Group that was sponsored by the Alameda County of Education. So some of the highlights and common message that we're hearing is the zero COLA for the next 2 years. There's going to be a 10% cut to our base in the local control funding formula. And the STRS and PERS rate is going to give us a little relief. It's be about 2 percentage points decrease. The cash deferrals, what this means is that normally we get our LCFF allocated to us. The state gives us our cash in payments, and it's known as a 559 payment. So they give us 5% of our total annual allocation in July. We get 5% in August, and then 9% from September through June. So what they're proposing to do, this is just a way for the state to kind of save money, is to hold back the cash that they would give us in June of this year. So they're going to start the cash deferrals this year. To instead of paying us in June, they're going to pay us in July. So what that means is that we really have to watch our cash flow and make sure that we have enough cash, which is another reason why it's always good to have reserves higher than 3%. And for us, 1 month is about 5 million. So also, I mean, fortunately, we are able to borrow between our funds. So for example, if we have money in Fund 40 or in, which is the capital reserves, or Fund 25 for developer fees, we are able to temporarily borrow from those funds to hold us over. And next year, that's even more critical because they're planning on deferring cash in April, May, and June of 2021. That's 3 months. So that's 27%. If you remember, I told you they give us 9% of our money from September through June. So they're planning on deferring those 3 months into July of the following year. And that's going to be about 15 million for our district. And based on, you know, the quick estimate and what we're looking at in terms of what we have available in our other funds, we should be fine in terms of the interfund borrowing. And in some cases, you know, school districts are having to borrow temporarily or purchase notes. And again, fortunately for our district, I think we'll be okay in terms of cash deferrals. And so there's also the federal funding, the CARES Act. I'm sure many of you have heard that the federal funding will come through. There's 2 parts to it right now. There's 1.65 billion that's going in for the K-12 share, and that's going to be allocated based on our Title I allocation. And right now our estimate is about 469,000. We do have to apply for it, and we're waiting for the actual application to come down from CDE, but hopefully it's not anything that's too complicated. It should be pretty straightforward. And then the other part of it is Governor Newsom is providing an additional 4.4 billion into K-12. 2.9 is going into school districts that have concentration funding. This is where we're a little bit worried. So as you recall, at second interim, I shared with the board that we were below that 55% threshold. Before that, we were only 0.6% above. So we were at 55.6%. So we were getting some concentration funding. But now we're at 0.02% below that threshold. So if nothing changes, we would not qualify for this federal funding. And right now it's estimated to be about $735 per ADA. And if our ADA is at about 54.77, That's about $4 million that we may not qualify for. So we're hoping that the legislature, because I know a lot of school districts and the politicians are not happy with this, that something will change, because this funding really should be for all students. And I think Superintendent Salinas mentioned earlier about learning gaps, and this was really the governor's idea of providing funding to mitigate some of that learning loss. But many of our school districts are hoping that it would be for all students, not just for school districts that have concentration funds that are above that 55% threshold. The special ed funding is going up 15% next year, which is great news. They're increasing the per ADA amount 15%. And they're also trying to provide us some flexibility and local relief. What that means is, for example, there might be some changes in the way they look at ADA and enrollment, instructional minutes, any increase in the interfund borrowing, because right now the limit is 75%, maybe increasing that to 85%, and lowering the requirement for our routine restricted maintenance account, which is normally 3% of our expenditures. In years past, when we've been in this situation, they've lowered that to 2%. So that gives us some relief in our general fund. And there will be changes to LCAP. It's due December 15th this year, and there's a different template that will be part of the adopted budget, but it's not the full LCAP that usually is required. And I'm hoping to bring you more updates at the June 4th board meeting, but these are just some of the highlights that I thought that I would share with you, since we know more about this May revise now. Next slide. So as a summary, our current year deficit is 566,000 better. It's at 266 in second interim. Our total deficit for this year and the next 2 years combined is 3.5 million in unrestricted funds. We have 5.5 million in budget reductions over the next 2 years that we've identified and incorporated in our multi-year projections. And with our 0% COLA and declining enrollment, our LCFF revenues are projected to decrease about 3.7 million over the next 2 years compared to our second interim estimates. Our school closures and consolidation is still part of our balancing plan. And if for whatever reason we're not able to do that, then we're going to have to identify other reductions. So our budget for next year will be presented to the board at the second June board meeting. We should anticipate more reductions, and we'll be providing more details about the May revise at the next meeting. Next. So just a review of where we're at third interim reporting right now. The next step will be our proposed budget. And then after that, we go through our year end, which finalizes our 19-20 year, and that will be presented in September. And then we're back to going through our first interim again, which will be due in December.
Thank you, Ms. De La Cruz. Again, just to reiterate, we are not voting today on a status qualified or positive. It's just approving the submission of this report as is, correct?
Yes, correct. So we'll be submitting to the county, CDE, and the controller's office the report that I've attached to this agenda item.
Very good. Thank you. Do we have questions from the board?
I have one.
Yes, Member Rodriguez. Mhm.
Ms. Dela Cruz, you said that we're just under the 55% in order for us to get those funds.
Yes.
And is that based on free and reduced lunch?
Yes, it's free and reduced lunch, English learners, and foster youth.
Okay, so because of the virus, the economics has changed a little bit. So are we looking at reaching out to make sure that those numbers cannot be a little bit based on what's going on right now?
I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, you were cutting out, in and out.
No, what I'm asking is, because of the virus, our economics has changed a little bit, and some families now would qualify for free and reduced lunch, and there's other economic indicators that have changed because of the virus. Would that, if we went out and re-looked at those figures, is it possible to get over 55% based on what's going on right now?
Yeah, well, that's part of our concern, and we're hoping that the state will consider that. I'm not sure when this budget bill goes to the legislators, if they're going to make some changes because of factors like that. Most of us, yes, we know that the economy has changed since our schools closed and because of this pandemic. Whether they'll provide us some opportunity to update our numbers, or which numbers they'll actually use, we're not really sure. But I do know that there's a lot of controversy around this proposal right now.
Or take the percentage off altogether and give it all to the, give the money to all kids.
Yes,
right.
That's really what it should be about, because the federal funding was supposed to help us backfill whatever shortage we have and whatever cuts we're experiencing with the state. So by only providing it to that population, really, doesn't sound fair.
Right.
So I know that that's what's surrounding a lot of the controversy right now up in Sacramento.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. I think it's a great point in terms of, we have cutoffs, we have deadlines, but I think it'd be great to, Ms. Dela Cruz, as you learn more about the opportunity, what would be the earliest opportunity to revise that number, given just this condition.
Right, yeah. Hopefully we'll learn more, and it may mean that we have to do some advocacy up at the state level.
Sure. Thank you. Member Gutierrez, did you have something?
Yes, I did.
Sorry.
One thing that I just wanted to point out, and just to reiterate what Ms. Dela Cruz said, is in regards to the additional funds that came in for related to Medi-Cal. Just for the sake of making the point and avoiding confusion, though those, and please clarify, Ms. Dela Cruz, if I'm saying any of this wrong, those funds did come in, however, they are being used. So yeah, it's not like there's free money out there that's not being used in some way, shape, or form. And then the question that I did have for you is, you mentioned that due to the agreement with NTA, funds have already been put aside. However, is there any money put aside for the other union groups yet?
No, not at this time. You'll see it in the assumptions that we did not provide any increase in the other groups in our multi-year.
I understand. And then kind of following what Member Rodriguez was saying in regard to our student population that would qualify for free lunch, how those numbers would definitely increase. And I remembered last school year, the staff and the team tried to do an extra emphasis on making sure that all the parents filled out the form correctly, especially those who qualified. And you might not have the answer for my question right now, but being that it is all online registration now, is there some kind of campaign or some kind of emphasis that or study to know if more students are or more families are applying to the free and reduced lunch, or again, if maybe there's going to be any future effort? And if you don't have that answer now, I understand.
Yeah, we don't have that data right now, but we can certainly look into it.
And Ms. De La Cruz, and I can also add, so, you know, the applications will come out after July 1st. And so we'll be able to definitely, we have to do a campaign. And I think that's part of our frustration. You know, we've seen how the economy has been serving our neighbors really well right up until this pandemic, because we've seen this drop off. Certainly there is the element of folks that aren't filling out the form. I definitely have to acknowledge that. But we also see a changing demographic for Newark, where prior to the pandemic, where we were starting to lose Title I's status at some of our schools. You know, Snow came out, Lincoln came out. And so that definitely was an indicator. But I think, as Ms. De La Cruz is saying, our frustration is, why take that snapshot back in time? And what Mr. Rodriguez said, if we were to say right now, fill out the form now, if I'm just going by just what I'm seeing at the pickup at Schilling or at the junior high or central kitchen, where we're increasing 4,500 meals a week, there's definitely a need. And so I think that's part of our frustration. Ms. De La Cruz was sharing San Leandro's another district where we're right underneath it, but the need is there. You know, we had, you know, our principals, we know we're going to need, you know, access to really address this learning gap. We're going to need more Chromebooks. We're going to need more online platforms and support and tools for our teachers. And that money would have really gone a long way. So that's, I think, part of the frustration. And hopefully, you know, talk to your elected officials, write to your, you know, legislators, because I think really they need to hear from us as well.
Yes.
So I have some questions, some clarification.
Sorry, go ahead, Member Zhang.
So the third interim report actually doesn't include the retroactive bargaining result we have with CSEA and NTA, right? Because they have yet to be certified, right? Remember, we have the retro bargain. We're bargaining retroactive for 2019 to 2020.
No, it includes NTA because we had a tentative agreement.
Okay, I see. Cool. Oh, that's good.
So
That's
we
good.
built it. Yeah, we built it into the multi-year because we had to submit our AB 1200. And so it is part of the assumption, but the CSEA, since we did not have a tentative agreement, is not included at this time.
Okay. So can you talk about the major cause for the deficit in the restricted fund? Is that solely due to special education?
Yes, the contribution to special education is 7 million.
Okay, I see. And given that you already incorporate the retroactive bargaining for NTA, and I guess, and we're total, I think we're totally down 600K, both active, I mean, both restrictive and unrestricted. And by the time in September, when we say close the book and we count all the encumbered, is this reasonable for me to hope for a balanced budget for a second year in a row? Or do you think that's too optimistic?
No, I think there's definitely potential for us to recover some unspent dollars. Of course, you know, there's still some unknowns until the end of the year, and we do have our budget set aside for that. We didn't want to sweep everything, but yes, there is an opportunity that maybe there's another $266,000 that may not be spent and unencumbered.
Okay. Actually, I don't know whether Member Rodriguez is still there, because I have a question for him. I really want to know, in the 2008, 2010, 2011, the Great Recession era, did we really have an increase on the Title I students? Member Rodriguez, I know you're there.
So
You're supposed to be asking
I don't
questions.
know that it's, I'm not sure how helpful it is. I mean, I think it'll be an interesting data point. I think that going forward, it's around, I think the work that you're doing, Ms. Dela Cruz and Superintendent Salinas to, what are some of the potential levers we have to try to get, we know this has been a slippy number, but here's the current process, right? So
Yeah.
how do we try to get qualified? I think that's
Yeah. So the reason I made that point is I actually wanted to be this hated contrarian here. I don't think that number will actually go up to 55%.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I said that is the potential people moving out of the district.
Right. So I think that's why I think we could, we all could have our conjectures. I think at the end of the day, we really have to make the best assumptions. And I think that coming back to the potential, well, I won't call it a surplus, but a balanced budget. I think if just a question to Ms. Dela Cruz, when you outlined, here's some potential additional costs we may be having coming into the fall, right? Just unintended or unplanned costs that has not been built into the model where we may end up in a balance, or has that been built in?
No, not yet.
Okay. So
We
I think,
will,
sorry.
yeah, we will do that for the adopted budget,
Yeah.
knowing what we know now.
Yeah. And I think that's just an important piece, because I think that it's great that the numbers are better. They're not as bad, but they're still, we'll call not, we don't have a surplus. We're not balanced until we understand these other components. So I think it's just proceeding with caution for those of us that are just looking a little bit, at the numbers that do look better. Of course, we hope we get that additional funding that gets us out of this, these difficult conversations.
Right.
I would like to, I'm sorry, Ms. Aquino here. We are at 15 to 10 o'clock. We still have quite a bit to go through on the agenda. So I would propose that we extend till, since we could only do this once, I would say that we extend to 11:30, just to be sure. Can I have a motion and a second to extend the meeting to 11:30?
I move that we extend the meeting to 11:30.
I second.
Thank you. Member Zhang moves. Member Castillo seconds. Member Castillo, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Member Zhang?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes, yes. I want to say no, but I understand our process. Yes.
Yeah. Member Rodriguez?
No.
Okay, my vote is yes. So 4 ayes and 1 no. Thank you. Apologize for that. Okay, any other, so Member Zhang, you'd asked a question. Anybody else? Question, comment to Ms. Dela Cruz?
Oh, if nobody, I have one last question regarding the 10% cut.
Sure.
So, Mr. Dela, that 10% cut is 10% reduction per ADA funding, right?
Yes, 10% to the per ADA per grade span. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's very sobering to hear.
Yes. So we're hoping for relief with the federal funding. We need to change, the governor's proposal and use the relief from the STRS and PERS rates. So that's what we have right now.
I think sobering is a good word. Member Zhang, we're hoping for the best, and hopefully there's more money's coming for relief. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dela Cruz. Thank you for the summary. Obviously, when we grab the document, it's a lot to go through. I think you've done a really good job at cleaning up the interim report. It's a lot easier to read and to understand the changes from period to period. So I really, I think speaking for all of us, I really appreciate that. And again, the summary was very helpful.
Thank you.
So with that, if there are no additional comments, did I ask for a motion on this one or did I skip it? I apologize on that. So again, the staff recommends the board approve the submission of the 2019-2020 third interim report to the ACOE, CDE, and SCO. I'm just abbreviating just a lot of words. May I have a motion in a second, please?
I make a motion that we go with staff recommendation.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. May I have a second?
A second.
Member Nguyen seconds. Okay, student member Castillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Zhang?
So are we voting on 12.1?
On the, yes, on the approval of the
Oh,
submission, yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you. Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Nguyen?
Yes.
And Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
And my vote is yes, so the motion passes unanimously. Ms. Aquino, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Dela Cruz.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, 12.2, which is staff recommends approval of resolution number 2071, use of redevelopment agency pass-through payments for AB 1290.
Yes, and Ms. Dela Cruz will be presenting this, and I believe we also have a consultant that's available for questions, I believe.
Yes.
So, yes.
Still here?
Is he still there? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, Superintendent Salinas, President Martinez, and members of the board. So in this resolution, we are talking about redevelopment agency funds that the district has been receiving over the years. There's really two parts of the redevelopment agency funds that we receive. One part we really don't have any control over because it's part of our LCFF allocation. It counts against the money that we received for LCFF. And the one that relates to this resolution is what we're really talking about. There's about $722,000 right now sitting in our fund balance, in the restricted fund balance. And it's been sitting there because of the restrictions. The redevelopment agency allows you to spend this on facilities related expenditures, but only within the project area of that redevelopment. Well, none of our schools are within that project area. So this resolution will open that up and allow us to use it for all of our schools and our district sites within our boundaries. And I'm going to have Mr. Dante Gumucio. He's here if you have any questions. But basically, that's the reason for this resolution, to give us some flexibility so we can start allocating the funds to be used for any facilities related expenditures, which again, you know, our district has a lot of maintenance needs. It could also be used for furniture and equipment. There's various ways that we can spend the money, but until we pass this resolution, there's not much that we can do with it. So Mr. Gumucio, does anybody have any questions? Is he here? Is he there?
Just a quick question, and I think Ms. Dela Cruz, you might be able to answer this.
Okay.
Are we redistricting our schools, or are we just like adding a policy to be able to change, withdraw those funds?
The latter. We're not redistricting anything. We are just giving the flexibility and I guess the approval to be able to use it throughout the district. And Dante, if you want to add to that, feel free.
Yes, President Martinez, Ms. Salinas, members of the board, I'm happy to be available to you to answer your questions. I will just say now, however, that among the facilities uses now permitted by statute, and this was per Senate Bill 107 in 2015, are routine and restricted maintenance. Prior to that time, our RMA was not a permitted facilities use. And now that it is, the state, it looks like, is going to give you some relief on your RRMA requirement, which is the size of which depends on your general fund, and which typically is funded from the general fund.
Yeah.
But in this case, you will be able, if you so choose, to use your the 772,000, and that is an amount that we've accounted for so far. There may be another 150,000 possibly that we may be able to find, but it's at least 722. And if you wish to use that in lieu of 722,000 in the general fund to help meet your to be reduced 2% RRMA requirement, you can for the benefit of your general fund. So it's sort of like finding at least $772,000 of funds you didn't know you had and could use. And you'll be able to use those funds anywhere within the district, notwithstanding that none of the district facilities is located within the redevelopment project area known as Project Area 2001 in the city of Newark.
So
And I just want to add the routine restricted maintenance account that Dante is talking about is a contribution from our general fund. So it's about $2 million that we have to contribute from our general fund.
And Ms. Dela Cruz, in this instance, this would be a one-time, right? A one-time savings of those to the general fund.
Well, we could spread it out. It's one time in terms of that money is one time.
The
It
total,
won't be
gotcha.
ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, if you wanted to budget and allocate it in 1 year, you could. But if you wanted to spread it out in a couple of years, we could do that too.
May I add a comment? Excuse me, I saw Mr. Zhang was about to ask a question. Forgive me for cutting off. We expect another 180,000 plus or minus to be paid to the district on or around June 1st.
Yeah.
After that time, to be conservative, we're projecting there will be no further AB 1290 pass-throughs. That's what these are technically, paid to the district, because under the RDA dissolution law, which dissolved all redevelopment agencies statewide on February 1st, 2012, various requirements were imposed that for some former redevelopment agencies means that their successor agencies will terminate many years before they would have otherwise. And so in the worst case, if June 1st is your last payment, that means 27 years of future payments and maybe another 2 or 3 will not be received thanks to the RDA dissolution law. Now, for some districts or for some former RDAs, the impact was much, much less. Payments will continue for many, many years. In some cases, pass-throughs, for example, will continue to school districts for as long as they would have under the prior law. But unfortunately, in your case, the Newark Redevelopment Agency, being not terribly successful or aggressive for many years, is gonna end sooner than later. Now, we have not yet completed, public economics has not yet completed our scope of work. And part of that remains to be completed is to determine exactly what the eligibility is of the successor agency to the former RDA in Newark to stay open. Because in order to terminate the successor agency, which then terminates the pass-throughs, not only do they have to have paid off all their bills, and we know that they will do that sometime after July 1st. We know that for a fact, but we don't know exactly when they plan to do it. We will find out. But they also have to, in addition to paying their bills, liquidated all the real property of the former RDA and settled any litigation that may still be outstanding. We know that between July and the end of the year, they're going to pay off all their bills. But what we don't know is the date, and we don't know that all the property is gone and that the litigation is gone. And so in the worst case, those two things are satisfied. They pay the bills and on July 1st, and you won't get any more revenues come June, or come next January. A better case, they've paid off, you know, they don't have a litigation issue, they don't have a property issue, but they're not going to pay their bills until December 1st. In that case, you will get probably another $190,000 next January. And then the best case is, regardless of when they pay their bills, they've got property or litigation to resolve that could extend another 2 or 3 years, in which case you could be getting $360,000, $380,000, $400,000 a year for 2 or 3 years. So we've taken the conservative approach for now, not knowing everything, that June 1st will be the last payment. We'll find out more in the near future.
Okay, so there are some members of our community have asked us about question about RDA, and I think there are some confusion about RDA regarding to so I just want to give a quick summary. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So the redevelopment agency is actually a tax incentive for city to reduce urban blight. So the city draw a circle of area, and then either through your general fund or a bond approved by your voters, you upgrade that area, and any additional incremental tax revenue that comes in that area get to stay in the area. And by law, a percentage of them need to go to the educational facility of the school located within that circle you draw for the redevelopment area. And for us, since Shilling, initially I thought Shilling was in the redevelopment area. Given Shilling was not there, so there is no educational facility that we can spend on. So we got to make this resolution so we can spend on everywhere else in the district. I guess I just have one question. That's sort of a follow-up on the restricted maintenance fund. So my question is, if the board votes today to give a green light to use the money anywhere in the district, my question is, for this current fiscal year, before we close the book, if any staff spend regular working hours working on projects related to educational facility, can that portion of the salary be reimbursed by this educational facility fund back to the general fund? I think that's my question.
The general answer to your question is maybe. The statute in the Ed Code, which is section 42-238, subdivision H, paragraph 6, and there are 2 other Ed Code sections adjacent to that that have similar requirements, restricts the use of these funds to land acquisition, new construction, reconstruction, modernization, deferred maintenance, and since 2015, regular maintenance. And nothing more specific is said in the statute. However, as the redevelopment consultant to FCMAT, Public Economics, has provided information that was posted for several years on FCMAT's website, I think it can still be retrieved, that these categories of facilities expenditure are not limited to capital outlay. Somewhat more specifically, they include both hard costs and soft costs. And more specifically, soft costs typically include leasing a portable. That's not capital outlay. Paying a consultant, paying an attorney, paying a planner. And paying a planner can include paying a planner who's a district employee, which may include a district employee who isn't called a planner. Okay, so if you choose to, if you're able and choose to document time spent by district employees involving facilities related issues, whether it's maintenance or not, my advice, I'm an economist, I'm not an attorney, but I've been doing this a long time. My advice is, Mr. Zhang, yes, you can do it. That's the long answer. Maybe is the short answer. Yes is the long answer.
Okay, thank you.
Right. But Mr. Gamuccio, you know, yeah, in reading it, you know, the verbiage does talk a lot more about what we'll call the hard costs, right? Yeah. So it looks like we have to go do some more, making sure we've got the sources that you pointed out to, just to make sure are going to be able to do.
I think that's not necessarily true. The statutes in question, yes, they identify these different categories in a sequence, but no one in my 30 years of experience has ever construed the sequence of the mention of the category as indicating a priority or a preference. Mm-hmm. So if you want to spend all of your money on the first category or on the last category or any of the categories in between, or spread it out however you choose, that is up to your discretion. Okay. And so obviously you can't spend the same dollar twice. So if you decide to use all of it for RRMA, then that means none of it is available for FF&E, etc. But sure. You understand where I'm saying, I think.
Okay. All right. Any other clarifying question? I'm sorry.
No, just make a comment. So sure. In terms of this year, if this resolution is passed, and let's say we wanted to use a portion of it to offset our routine restricted maintenance this year, we could do that, right?
Yes.
We did talk about that. So in a sense, Member Zhang, there is some opportunity to use it this year before we close the books.
Yeah. So let me understand what this gentleman just said. He said yes, which means if we're caught out of compliance and get fined, he's going to pay the fine. That's my understanding of what he said.
Well, I do. Our firm does have professional liability insurance, so I think I can agree with you.
I know that's the kind of insurance I sell, by the way, in case you want.
Okay.
All right. No, thank you, Member Rodriguez. Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board?
I just want to make light of Member Zhang. Member Zhang, you can possibly have a balanced budget if you were to approve this resolution.
Okay. I think it's one step closer to a second balanced budget in a year. I mean, in 2 years.
Yes.
Okay. And so with that, I apologize. We've been going a little bit. I haven't been following my own process today, so I do apologize. Before entering into discussion, I usually call for a motion in a second. So if there are no more questions, I will go ahead and ask for a motion a second to approve the staff recommendation, approval of resolution 2071, use of redevelopment agency pass-through payments per AB 1290. I have a motion in a second.
I move we approve resolution number 2071.
I can second that.
Thank you. Member Zhang moves. Member Rodriguez seconds. All right. Student member Castillo, how do you vote? Is he still here?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Harris?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. So we have 5 ayes and 1 abstention by student member Castillo. Thank you. So the motion carries and we approve resolution 2071. Thank you so much, Ms. Dela Cruz, and is our host, and Mr. Gumicho, for explaining and answering all of our questions. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say good evening now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, and with that, we had pulled agenda item 12.3. So we move, with that, we move to consent agenda personnel items. May I have a motion and a second to approve personnel items 13.1, 13.2, 13.3 as is?
I move that we approve consent agenda 13.1 to 13.3.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Member Gutierrez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Yes.
Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. So the consent agenda personnel items approved, 5 ayes. Consent agenda non-personnel items 14.1, 14.2. These are board policies. 14.3, 14.4, 14.5, and the warrant report 14.6. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda non-personnel items as is.
I make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, member Gutierrez moves, student member Castillo seconds. Student member Castillo, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Zhang?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
And my vote is a yes as well, so it passes unanimously. Thank you. And with that, we move to item 15, Board of Education Committee reports and announcements, request and debrief. The first item is the Education Committee report. I'm sorry, not the education, apologize. Any of the committee reports, it's a long day. Any committee reports, I know obviously we had a debrief on Godby, anything from the communication committee and or Mission Valley ROP, any other committees that the board would like to?
This is Member Gutierrez. I know it's been said before, but I'll say it again regarding the consolidation committee. There's the first meeting is going to be on May 27th, I believe at 6 p.m.
Great. Thank you. Anything from the communication committee you'd like to share? If not, we move to item 15.2, which is committee reports, announcements, and requests. And we'll start with student member Castillo.
Thank you, President Martinez. So on a brief personal note, I was one of the students invited to come pick up awards today. And I'm proud to say that I earned over $10,000 in scholarships from the Newark Community Fund, or the Newark Community Scholarships. So it's an extreme honor to be the recipient of these scholarships. I hope to do their sponsors justice. and it's honestly a big help in paying for my freshman year at Santa Barbara.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I do have two things that I would like to point out. As I said in the public comment for the special meeting that occurred at 5 p.m., there are the minutes for several meetings dating back to 2019 are missing. It's just a record-keeping thing. They should be public to view. As for the attachments on today's regular meeting agenda, some of them are required to download by default. And I think that just as a matter of maintaining equitable access to all public documents, that they should be in a PDF form rather than a rich text format or Microsoft PowerPoint.
I noticed that as well. Yeah, sorry, I apologize. Thank you.
And then the last thing is a matter of concern about myself, that I was not invited to join the special meeting today at 5 p.m. I don't exactly know why, because it was an open meeting, and President Martinez stated herself that the only matter to be discussed was not specifically personnel. Therefore, I did have the authority to speak on it and to vote on it. So either an answer now or a response later would be fine. I just do want to know why I wasn't invited to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Castillo. I'll respond. I think it was just an oversight. I mean, I believe we did discuss it in full transparency from a person, as a personnel topic. We weren't discussing a specific individual, but it was a hiring personnel item. But it was a public, an open meeting, and so I will get clarification. So it may have been completely my error. So I apologize if that's the case, but I will get clarification.
Thank you, President Martinez.
Thank you, Member Jean. I'm sorry. Was that it? Okay. Thank you, Member Jean.
Oh, I really don't have that much to say. I just want to say that New Orleans as a city has the 3rd or 4th highest infection rate about COVID-19 in Alameda County. So everybody stay safe, wear a mask.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Member Nguyen.
Thank you. Congratulations, Cesar, on those amazing scholarships. Good job. And be proud of yourself. You did great. And I just wanted to say that I was able to work with Ms. Calderon to finish up the last photo shoot for the last 3 students this past Tuesday. And we were able to finish up 27 out of the 30 students for their portraits. And it was a wonderful experience to be able to work with the students. And I wanted to thank Member Gutierrez again for her help on the first photo session that we had with the students, and also to Ms. Calderon and her staff for being supportive of her students, and the students for coming out and enjoying themselves and having fun taking the photos. And that's it.
Thank you. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you and congratulate the scholarship committee and the people that make the kids. I know I've been in contact with Sonia and Danielle and a lot of people. And the community, this is a way for us to give to the kids, and it's really appreciated. I want to thank all of you for hanging in there. This has been a long day, and I thank you for serving our kids. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez. Member Gutierrez.
Hi, thank you. I actually want to take this opportunity. I hope both of you guys can hear me. I had to put on the headphones.
It's a little choppy.
Let me just one last time. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do it this way. I'll be quick. Okay, just I wanted to take this opportunity to actually express some concerns that I had from some parents. I had some reach out to me because they were still unaware of what was going on with the high school graduation. And I'm not sure if it's because they probably have an incorrect email or don't have an email that they sent to the district. I just wanted to confirm, Ms. Salinas, if they have to reach out, if the best person of contact to reach would be the office office manager.
It can be, or it can be the principal in that case, and I can certainly speak with the principal to maybe do a call out to see if we can fully engage. I know that the student groups, they did a video in English and in Spanish. I think Mr. Castillo did the Spanish version, I heard. But again, we want to make sure that everyone's getting that message. So I can definitely follow up with the principals.
Okay, and then another parent concern, and regarding the distance learning, they're concerned that their children education has fallen short, and want to know what resources either the district has or the community has available to them, such as tutoring, summer school, additional pamphlets, either apps, any kind of additional resources that they can get their hands on to help their student pick up wherever they fell back on. So just throwing that out there. And then consolidation committee, like I mentioned, May 27th at 6 p.m. Just for our community members out there, the ones that are not aware of it yet, if any of the students, Newark students, receive free or reduced lunch, the state has made available a PEBT card, so please go out there and apply. Reminder to please complete your census, and two huge thank yous, one to the city of Newark, who is doing food drives twice a month now, first and third of the month, and they are doing I believe it's 200 food packages for on each day, and they are now asking for donations from any of the Newark community or anyone who can make donations to help assist with these food drives. And another huge thank you to All Sullivans, who is continuing to feed our students. And they have a breakfast tomorrow, so let me just check the schedule right here. Where we at? Oh, my phone. Sorry. Okay, it is, oh, my apologies. Here we go.
8 to 10.
So, yeah, tomorrow, 8 to 10. Thank you, Member Rodriguez. And they are doing breakfast and dinner. So keep a lookout for that. But again, huge thank you to the team at All Sullivans. That's it for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Did I?
Sorry, I know I went already, but I just.
No, sorry. I just forget. Did I just forget you? I'm so sorry, Member Wayne. Go ahead.
I just remembered something that because I wanted to ask earlier when Superintendent Salinas was giving her superintendent report, and I didn't get a chance to. But I know that there are definitely concerns in the community about what our plans are for next year in terms of how we're going to approach if we're doing distance learning and all of that stuff, or how are we going to go back into the schools. So, and I know that it is in your PowerPoint presentation. Is it possible for us to please post that to the school's website? I mean, the district's website, so that parents can have access to it, because there are definite concerns. And I know that several families are considering charter schools and they're considering all options, and we want them to be able to feel comfortable to make the decision to enroll their students into our district. And I would like that if you could make that available for them. Thank you.
And President Martinez, if I may, sorry, one last thing I just got reminded of. For Superintendent Salinas, no answer needed now, but maybe even on a Friday memo. Is there any update on the hotspots? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and actually that's a fantastic idea. I remember when Superintendent Salinas, I think the presentation you put together, you know, though no final answers, just has a lot of really good information about all the moving pieces. So I think if anything, that just gives you know, full transparency. Here's what we know. I think that's if possible, that would be a great idea to put it on the website. So I would like to, you know, really thank Member Nguyen and Member Gutierrez for their all their work in working with our McGregor kids in, you know, getting their senior portraits done. I remember when, thank you for sharing a couple of those, and they're just really amazing quality, but just those candid moments that you captured with some family members or just the students themselves are beautiful. And I remember when mentioned Member Gutierrez that you were a great scene director. So it sounds like it was a great team effort. So I'm sure a lot of folks, a lot of families, a lot of kids are really happy with what you've done. So thank you so much on behalf of all of us. Superintendent Salinas, once again, I just want to thank you and your team for all the work that you're doing. We know there's a lot of moving pieces. We know a lot of us are like pulling on your shirt quite a bit. So please continue to, you know, just keep us informed. We recognize that there are a lot of moving pieces. So we know it's not easy. So we are here to support in any which way we can. So please do let us know if there's anything we can do. I do have one request perhaps for the next meeting, which is an update on enrollment or registration efforts. And I know we talked about it the last meeting, and I think at the time you all had pulled some information I think was looking kind of relative to where we were last year. I was in another school meeting joining as a parent, and I heard a number that was a little bit disconcerting in terms of where we are in enrollment in one of the schools versus last year. And I don't want to throw it out there because you and I haven't had a chance to talk about it. So I don't know if it's just a misalignment of information. So if I could just ask you and staff to maybe give us an update at the next regular meeting, that would be great. If that's okay with the rest of the board, if that's a reasonable request. You all agree? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Is that a reasonable ask?
Yes,
okay.
it is.
Okay, and with that, I turn it over to you for concluding comments, Superintendent Salinas.
Yes, so thank you. These are wonderful suggestions at the end, and I know Ms. Aquina and I are both taking some notes. So thank you for that. You know, what I want to make sure is I think we have to continue to get better on communicating, and certainly we're making a better practice of always translating our information and continuing to strive to make sure that our parents are getting all the information. So I'm going to think about what was proposed tonight to see how else we can also spread that out beyond the emails and maybe more of the webinars that we did the last 2 weeks, and that seemed to get a different group of parents. I also want to share that Ms. Leon has done a really great job with trying to connect with Tri-City Health, and right now we're in the middle of negotiating that we may be a site at Schilling Elementary where we can receive twice a month food boxes. And so wonderful news, and thank you, Ms. Leon is tapping her resources up there in the city of Fremont to try to get that. So we'll have that publicized as soon as possible if in fact we're able to start in June with food boxes twice a month at the food distribution in addition to the lunches. And then I also want to share that in terms of the hotspots, you know, that has been, they're here. I can share that the hotspots are here, but certainly as we are very happy that this evening we approved our new IT manager. So our two folks, I mean, it's been tough on them. To David Mellons in particular, he's been really, you know, burning it on both ends and trying to help us as a district. But they are programmed now. We have a certain number programmed, and so student services will be reaching out to the families per the principals and our list of our homeless McKinney-Vento students. And so families will be invited by appointment to come pick up those hotspots, along with some of them may also need Chromebooks. So we told the principals we would take that on. I also want to share, if you've seen the notices from your principals, if you're a continuing student, you're going to keep your Chromebooks for the summer, because we anticipate, you know, although I'm very optimistic with the slides, I don't know. I mean, our new normal may be at minimum a hybrid of sorts. So we know that we don't want to collect them back in order to just have to clean them down and give them right back. So folks are going to be collecting that. So we know that for the summer, some of our families can definitely benefit from continuing to use the Chromebooks and the hotspots. And then in terms of summer slide, or even this gap, as we've done for the last 2 years, this is now our third year, we have purchased for every elementary student a summer book for the grade level they're going into. And so those will be distributed. In fact, thank you, Wendell, you were fantastic. If you've been by the district office, all those boxes, he's in the middle of pulling them. Ms. Martinez probably saw, he's been pulling them out and delivering them to offices, so that as parents start to check out with their students, kids will be receiving a workbook. I know it's not a lot, but it's something to start to bridge that gap, and we can certainly think of a plan to provide more resources to our families. And I want to finally end by saying thank you to all of you for your support. This is a moving target. I thought I'd seen it all, and this pandemic has really, opened up my eyes, and it's been, I'm very thankful for your support. And I want to single out and end on this. I want to really publicly recognize Ms. Aquino. Ms. Aquino, you know, I remember when we first started working, and now I see you've been doing so much more. You whip together these PowerPoints, you're able to upload. I'll call her at 9 o'clock at night, can you post it? And she's posting things and sending out messages. And as you all know, she also supports all of you. So I know she's got a lot of folks to support, but I want to publicly thank her, because it's, you know, she's been working to keep up, and she just says, okay, Letty, I got it. What else? And I said, just take a break. So thank you, Ms. Aquino. And that's it for tonight for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Salinas. And I have to echo that, because we're constantly throwing stuff at Ms. Aquino. And, you know, as you were speaking and, you know, just thinking about all the things you're doing, Superintendent Salinas, you know, I did neglect to mention not everybody that on this meeting was on the special meeting today. And one of the things that I mentioned at that time was that we as a board have selected a finalist for superintendent candidate here in Newark. So hopefully we're going to be able to get you some support, because you are wearing a ton of hats. So once again, thank you for everything. But I did want to share that obviously everything is still confidential. So just wanted to make sure folks knew that we are trying to get through a contract negotiation as quickly as possible, so that we are able to bring the candidate, and then for final confirmation. Our initial target was the beginning of June. Our first meeting may have to be the second, just because of where, you know, what's allowed during a regular meeting and special meetings. So just wanted to share that with those that are still with us on the meeting. So with that, thank you very
Ms.
much.
Martinez,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Before you end, just a question for Ms. Salinas. I didn't hear in regards to the summer books. For what grades is that going to be?
Elementary. She mentioned elementary.
Elementary schools. I could be wrong, but I think it's K-5.
Okay, thank you.
K-6. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
I think it was K-5. Okay, thank you very much. And with that, I will entertain a motion and a second to adjourn.
No.
Oh, sorry. Oh, well, I have to adjourn this meeting and open the other meeting. Sorry.
Point of order, it's already been adjourned, and you
It's
said that
you're
you would
right.
just
Yeah,
read
I should have
the comments
restarted.
at the end of this
So
meeting.
I will read, thank you very much, Student Member Castillo. Okay, so before we adjourn, we do have 4 more comments. So Ms. Aquino, let's go ahead and get through those. Thank you very much.
Came to my attention that an agenda item had been added to closed session tomorrow to delay the interview process for high school principal. As a parent of an incoming 9th grader, I'm concerned the delay in interview process as it will minimize the best candidates for this post. Also, with the uncertainty we have now, we need the new principal start as early as July 1st to get ready for the new school year. I urge you and all the board members to consider to stay with the scheduled hiring process without a delay. Thank you, Sravani. To the honorable board, it is heartbreaking to think that there is a possibility that Olivia Rangel may not be the principal at Newark Memorial next year due to the delayed interview process. Therefore, it was important to me to share how much of an impact she's had on students as well as staff, myself included. I've worked closely with Ms. Rangel throughout my time at Newark Memorial High School and in my position as CATS coordinator. She's a trusted fellow colleague who I had the pleasure of collaborating with to support the needs of students. In my time working with her, many qualities stood out, including her ability to adapt and appropriately cater to the emotional and behavioral challenges and needs that were often presented to her as interim principal. Ms. Rangel's grace, kind heart, and dedication to students, as well as her strong leadership, definitely made Newark Memorial a safer, caring climate for all of us. Her grounded sense of self and approachability not only means that she is respected among the students, but also the teachers and staff as well. Ms. Rangel would go above and beyond to support students and demonstrated her commitment to equity, including how restorative practices and alternatives to suspension can better address the root of behavioral and emotional changes of at-promise youth. She demonstrated a keen understanding of backgrounds that these students came from. Also, despite her busy schedule, there were a few instances where Ms. Rangel was present in several restorative mediations and conferences with students with me as a facilitator, and she was incredibly impactful. Ms. Rangel continuously demonstrates respect and empathy to the students and staff in all of her interactions. In all, Ms. Rangel has shown that she is organized, perceptive, compassionate, and collaborative. She can mitigate the many issues that surface in the school setting with a solid sense of steadiness and knowledge. I hope you will please reconsider the decision to push back the principal interviews, as it will be potentially detrimental to our students and staff. Although I have not been at Newark Memorial for many years, it is still very apparent that Ms. Rangel's leadership has created a sense of stability that is much needed. Without a doubt, Ms. Rangel is capable of being your ideal candidate for this position. Thank you, Vanessa Shea. I am writing to implore you to not postpone the original date of the Newark Memorial High School principal interviews until further date. I have current junior and freshmen at Newark Memorial High School. I have seen the positive effect our interim principal has had on the students, staff, and most importantly, creating a positive Newark Memorial High School culture for the students to thrive in. The major impact of not having these interviews in the original timeframe is troubling on many levels. Newark Memorial High School needs a principal now, so we can plan for the future. Having gone through several principals in the last few years at Newark Memorial High School, there needs to be continuity in future planning. 2020-2021 school year is going to be tough enough with any classroom and instructional planning due to COVID-19. Newark Memorial High School needs that planning now. We as a Newark community are all living in a need-to-know status of uncertainty right now. By delaying this process, we are shortchanging our students and staff. We need the best candidate possible, but more importantly, we need the person in place so we can continue planning for our Newark Memorial High School students' futures. We need to put the students of Newark Memorial High School first. Please do not delay the hiring process for our Newark Memorial High School principal, Ruth Dalton, lifelong Newark resident. Dear Newark Unified School District Board of Education, my name is Christopher Overton, and in the next few weeks, I will be finishing my 7th year teaching French at Newark Memorial High School. In this time, I've come to know numerous exceptional teachers and staff and have felt fully supported along the way. One of the things I truly love about my school and my district is the openness and kindness of the people who work here and how easy it has been to get along with everyone. Since the fall of 2013, when I started teaching at the high school, I've seen 7 different principals come and go, either in a permanent capacity or as temporary placement, like a bandage hastily placed on a bleeding wound. Of these 7, none were without their faults, but they all had positive qualities and brought with them their unique experience and motivations that granted them a rightful spot in our district. The problem that I address in this letter is not an issue that I or any of my colleagues at the high school have had with any of these 7 principals. Rather, the concern, to be frank, the frustration that I share with my fellow teachers and staff, simply that we have had so many in such a limited time frame. I have seen wonderful programs come to fruition under the guidance and leadership of a cohesive administrative team. I have felt morale swing upwards as teachers and staff continued the positive work carried over from previous years. I've also felt an odd mix of pessimism and eventual hopefulness each time our staff has been asked to rally behind the new leader with their own approach and goals. Like a group of students eager to learn something new, we teachers and staff require consistency of leadership in order to feel positive about coming to work both today and tomorrow. That consistency is what our high school is lacking. One time I was in another teacher's classroom and noticed a piece of paper that had hung up on the wall. On it was a list of the different principals and assistant principals Newark Memorial High School has had over the past 20 years. What struck me is that in all this time, we have not had the same principal more than 4 years in a row. I urge the board to seriously consider this last point. In over 20 years, no principal has stayed with our staff at the high school for any longer than 4 years. If it made sense to delay the hiring process when school was closed in March due to concerns over the COVID-19 crisis and the obvious uncertainties as to the future, I argue that it does not make sense now to postpone the process any further. If we wait until July to even truly begin the search for a qualified and caring principal, we may come up shorthanded. July is just 1 month before the start of the 2021 school year. Lastly, I need to correct a previous statement. I said that since I was hired on in 2013, I have seen 7 different principals come and go, but the fact is that our 7th principal, Olivia Rangel, has not yet gone. She hasn't gone anywhere for several years. She started as a teacher in our district and has stepped into the position of principal with grace, understanding, and professionalism. I remind the board that we have a very dedicated candidate for principal currently fulfilling that role very well. If we wish to avoid yet another change, then we need to act sooner than later. Christopher Overton.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Aquino. And I believe that's the last comment. So with that, I will entertain a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Member Gutierrez motions.
A second.
Member Nguyen seconds. Student Member Castillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Nguyen?
Yes.
Member Gutierrez?
Yes.
Member Rodriguez?
Says yes.
Yeah. Member Zhang?
Yes.
And my vote is yes. So the motion passes unanimously. Meeting adjourned at 10:42. Thank you and good evening.